Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Burnside Council. Please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their lives for this country and its people, and particularly significant since yesterday was Remembrance Day. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all those who reside, study, work in and visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. I welcome members in the gallery and ask them to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the City of Burnside. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound and you are asked to follow directions of Council staff. I need to remind all that Council meetings are live streamed through the City of Burnside website and a copy of tonight's agenda is available by downloading this from the website. I remind all elected members of the importance of using their microphones appropriately and their buzzers and so that people at home can understand and follow. And please would you turn off your mobile phones off or onto silent. Before we begin, I would like to make a special welcome to our CEO-elect, Mr. Chris Cowley, who is sitting in the gallery. He is with us tonight, but will not be actually taking up his role until January of 2020. And I also acknowledge, nice to see Mr. Cameron here as well. We haven't seen you for a while, but welcome back. Okay. So, leave apologies, we have none. Leave of absence, we have none. Confirmation of minutes. Motion, please. Councillor Dawes moved, Councillor Lemon seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Deputations. Now, we do have a large number of deputations tonight, and we're going to start with the one that is not related specifically to the wheel park, and that is Mr. Lou Fantasia. And we also, if he's here, okay, if you'd like to come to this desk here in the middle, and while I just explain a few more and get some other information. We also have, as you will have been told via email this afternoon, seven deputations plus, and they are 3 and 3 in relation to the wheel park, 3 for, 3 against. We also have had, since those numbers closed, 2 more requests, 1 supporting, 1 not supporting, and I need a direction from 2/3 of the majority of the people here as to whether or not you wish to hear those additional deputations. So those are in favour, please raise your hand. Right, that's sufficient number. Thank you. So those people will be heard as well. That's Stacey Bell and Son and Julian Robbins, or Robins. So if they are here, then they will be heard this evening as well. So now, Mr. Fantasia, you have 5 minutes. There'll be a warning bell at 4 minutes. If you would just state your name and suburb, that's all, and then we will start timing you and give you the warning when it's getting closer to the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps if you just state your topic first as well.
Right. I wish to speak in relation to the policy review, road traffic and management policy. My name's Lou Fantasia. I'm from Payneham South, but I represent Mr. Pasquale Ferraro, who lives on Glenman Road at Hazelwood Park. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening, and I do understand it was short notice. As I've mentioned, I'm speaking in relation to the policy review. Council has undertaken a review of the policy, and the report of the amendments to this policy have been presented for Council's endorsement later this evening. We wish to raise some concerns on this matter as follows. We're concerned about the lack of public consultation There has been no public consultation on the review of this policy. Consultation has only been undertaken internally within the organisation and with you, the elected members. While the report refers to feedback from sections of the community in relation to the 40-kilometre speed limit, there's been no opportunity afforded to the wider community to view and comment on the changes, or where there are no changes to various of the provisions. Council's community engagement policy seeks the engagement and participation of the community to improve council understanding of its community views. Further, it is of a high quality community engagement that is critical to successful development of sustainable policies and decisions by this council. The policy requires consultation on a wide range of matters, including the development policies, which in our opinion also must include any review that council undertakes of its policies that affect its community. We say that the community should be allowed to have their say, provide an input of what they like or don't like with the policy, and what changes, if any, they would like to see with elements of the policy. We note reference to discussions and proposed changes in a number of the provisions of the policy, and the reasons are provided to such changes, such as the removal of the 1.5 separation distance from driveways from street trees. We understand why that's there and what it means. However, there is no discussion of why there is no change to other provisions of the policy, such as the recommended clause 6.37 relating to multiple driveways. There are some minor changes to these provisions, the addition of an and or an or, and the subclauses that will fall under these for greater clarification purposes, as we understand. But there's no review or commentary or discussion of why, in relation to discouraging two driveways on a single property, unless it has a frontage of more than 30 metres, why the 30 metres remains. Why is 30 metres an appropriate figure? When in parts of the council area, the council's own development plan allows allotments to be created for detached dwellings of 12 metres and for semi-detached dwelling of 10 metres, thereby two driveways over a 24-metre distance or 20 metres respectively, thereby resulting in a driveway and over a distance of two driveways over a distance of less than 30 metres. We ask that the further consideration of the policy be deferred to enable the provisions of the policy to be appropriately reviewed and with commentary and discussion, and the reviewed document be available to ratepayers of the area for their consideration and comment to be provided to council, so that council has a better understanding of its community's views on this policy. We thank you for hearing and your consideration of the matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind remaining in case there are any elected members who wish to ask you a question.
Sure.
Right, so Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming along tonight, Mr Fantasia. I didn't quite get who you represent. You don't need to identify them again unless you want to, but do you represent a business or a resident who might want to do changes, make changes?
A resident.
Councillor Pickett.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I just wanted to, I obviously wrote it down wrong. Remind me the clause you referred to in regard to the driveways?
6.3.
The new clause is 6.37. I think the old clause was 6.36, which relates to multiple driveways access. And
right. The question of enough consultation or not enough consultation is always a thorny one. I was trying to get to that. That's obviously an issue that if we did go out to consultation, you responded to, that would be one of the things you would respond to. Is there anything else in the policy? You did touch on a few other things, but what things would you tell us that we should do differently?
Look, the multiple driveways was the principal one that I was asked to address. We understand, I think it's more about the fact that there are some areas that people may want to have some more consideration about. As I said, I understand the 1.5 clearance separation distance from street trees being removed, and that now be made subject to an arborist report. But I suppose there's an issue with that, is that while in some cases it might allow driveways to come close to a tree, in other circumstances it may require a wider berth, and that might have an impact on people, and there's no ability to understand what that impact will be until one day they lodge an application, all of a sudden they find they've got to be 4 metres off the driveway, 4 metres off the tree, and they're thinking, wait a minute, what's going on? So I suppose it's things like that which have got other ramifications that people need to understand before I think a policy gets adopted that says, yes, it might be in your favour, but it might actually work against you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cornick.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for coming in. We don't get a lot of people coming in for policy, and it's actually one of our core functions to do policy. It is a first, and to get the policy right to ensure that everyone in the community is covered. Thank you very much for highlighting those changes. It's really important. Thank you.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I notice you're a planner by trade, and I was just wondering, in being a planner, do you think that the new design code may address all of your concerns anyway? Thank you.
Maybe not the right forum to discuss this.
I was actually going to say that question is not related specifically to this policy.
It's another.
And it's
another forum, and it's another can of worms. So I think we need to leave that one.
Yeah, and I think you've given a very appropriate answer. So thank you very much for that. Since there are no other names on the list, I'd like to thank you very much for coming in, and you can either stay or go as you choose. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for coming in. Okay, the next set of deputations are all related to the wheel park pump track trial, and we are starting with those who submitted theirs first, so they go in order of request. And the first one is Rochelle Martin. Again, Rochelle, just your name and suburb is all that's required, and you know the way it operates because you have presented before.
Rochelle Martin, and I live in Wattle Park. Lord Mayor, councillors, administration, ladies and gentlemen, and the youth of Burnside, thank you for letting me speak again tonight. I'm not here to complain. It's never been about complaining. It's been about finding a solution. I'm here to follow up on how proactive I've been in the last 2 months since we all sat here at the end of August and listened to the decision that received majority support by council. The vote that instructed Burnside Council administration to report further on a 12-month pump track trial and to investigate conversations with neighbouring councils in regard to the potential of a joint skate park project. Rather than sitting back and doing nothing, I've been so busy and proactively doing what I can for our local and neighbouring councils. I've given a deputation to Norwood Council with Councillor Davis. I have attended the Unley Council discussion on the potential of a collaboration. I've met with multiple local MPs and many of you councillors here tonight. I've combined positive energy with another parent who lives in Burnside, Sam, you rock. And just quickly, thank you to our families who have let us pour so much energy into this. We've built Skate the East, a social platform that I've emailed you all about to highlight our work. For an awesome potential facility within the eastern suburbs, and we have so much support. However, I completely understand that a permanent facility is going to take time, for reasons including locations, community consultation and costs. But for the residents within the Burnside community, there needs to be a step forward. Because this is where the discussion started, and we do not have a facility for scooters, BMX, skateboarders, roller skaters and rollerbladers. A pump track trial tonight is a compromise. It's not a skate park, it's not a permanent location. It's an opportunity to finally allow the kids and the youth to participate in this discussion at a level that they can. Honestly, this discussion has been controlled by adults, and I still question how you can make a decision in the best interests of the kids and the youth if you don't let them get involved. I believe it is a good investment in purchasing this facility for our community. Let's see the enjoyment, let's give the kids a safer place to ride. Let's gather further statistics to support a permanent facility. Let's give the people with concerns a chance to experience the benefits and remove the fear, as many of these are based on assumptions. I acknowledge some people speaking after me will not see this from the same point of view, but I'm not sure what else all of us that support these unstructured leisure activities can do if we don't do a trial. How many years and how many times have they been moved aside by not making a decision? If a trial runs for 12 months plus the lead time that we know it is to purchase it, isn't that still a shorter amount of time than nothing over the last 20 years? I've met so many awesome people on this journey, kids, parents, talented youth, MPs, councillors, and the other people speaking tonight in support of this trial. So I ask each of you tonight, on behalf of all these people that Skate the East represent and as a resident of the City of Burnside, surely I've shown my commitment to this debate. Please vote together tonight. Please move forward with this pump track trial whilst we still pursue discussions with a regional option. Thank you.
I don't have anyone on the screen, so I'm just going to take this opportunity to thank you very much for coming and doing a deputation, and also for all the work that it's obvious that you have been involved in over a period of time in lead up to tonight. So thank you. Now I will call upon Michael Harris Walker to make his deputation. Now, Michael, you haven't done one before, have you? But do you get the gist of the 5 minutes and 4 minute bell? Okay. And just your name and your suburb. You don't have to give your full address.
So my name is Michael Harris Walker. I'm in here today to support Skate the East and the indoor skate park. I actually live down south. I work within skate parks all over Adelaide. And I work with a lot of councils. I've worked with Adelaide City Council to help make their new skate park. I've worked with St Clair's to get their new skate park, which will hopefully be finished soon. And I've worked with a lot of other companies and councils within the whole of South Australia. So I'll give you a quick brief of why I'm here and what I do. So I run a youth organisation called Skate Therapy. So we teach resilience, persistence and self-worth to kids of all ages and of all socio-economical backgrounds. And we've just gone into working with National Disability Insurance Scheme to teach disabled kids that they are worth something in all sorts of sports. The benefit from my eyes for even a pump track is the fact that you're giving the youth the opportunity to get out there and be active in a sport that they're very comfortable and very familiar with. Over the 3 years, I've helped over 400 kids find their own self-worth. A lot of them move on and choose other sports. A lot of them have kept skating. A lot of them have gone to international and national competitions within just skateboarding. A skate park facility isn't just a piece of concrete sitting in the middle of a park. A skate park facility is a training ground for some people. It's a creative space, like a piece of artwork for some people. And for other people, it's just a place to get away from the daily woes of life. Skate parks get used by people of all ages. It's not just for the youth. I'm 40 myself. I've been skateboarding for 30 years. I was a street kid and now I own 2 businesses. The bigger benefits from any sort of skate facility is the unstructured sports. Not all kids fit into football or soccer or tennis or any of the other mainstream sports. A lot of kids see it as a freedom to do what they want, when they want and how they want. And not all kids are trouble. As I've been a youth worker for 10 years, I've worked with troubled kids and I've worked with very decent kids that just want to be heard. A skate park gives them the opportunity to be heard in their own creative ways. It also keeps them fit, it keeps them off technology. Technology is the biggest problem these days. And if we don't have facilities for these kids to work on and to play in, they're just going to go onto technology. And then we're not going to see the healthy, active kids that we used to see in our days. Pretty much I'm going to conclude it there. So in conclusion, in my eyes, from the industry perspective, it's not the sport itself or the sports that are at the facilities, and it's not the communities saying for or against. The biggest issue is the education of what the purpose of the skate park is. Without teaching people what a skate park is actually there for, it might as well just be a piece of concrete on the ground. I would like to thank you for your time and allowing me to speak, and if you've got any questions, I'm quite happy to answer.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for coming along tonight.
No worries.
and for highlighting an area that I hadn't thought about. So thank you, that was very interesting. What age group are you referencing and talking about tonight? And I'm a
so
bit
I work with-
confused.
sorry.
A bit confused about a pump track versus a skate park
Yep.
and the differentiation.
So
Thanks.
I work with kids from 5 to 40. I work with parents that want to learn how to skate so they can spend time with their kids. So a pump track to me is no different to a skate park. It's somewhere where a parent can take their kid and enjoy whichever wheel sport they like to do. So like I said, a piece of concrete on the ground is somewhere for a kid to express themselves, pretty much. So it doesn't, the age is irrelevant, pretty much.
Councillor Hughes.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you very much for sharing your really personal story with us all.
No worries, no worries.
Thank you again. Since there don't appear to be any other questions, thank you very much again for coming.
No worries, thank you.
Now we have Emma and Dan Searle. You okay with the how it operates now? Right, thank you.
I've got the gist.
Just your name and suburb.
My name's Emma Searle from Beulah Park. Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your time tonight. This deputation was made Sunday evening when I was informed that we were meeting on the site of Mellor Reserve, which you would all be aware of in Beulah Park. You would be aware of it because it is highly utilised as a site for Burnside Kinder Gym, girl guides, local tennis players, medieval sword fighters every Sunday, dog owners, bike riders, birthday parties, events, and that's just to name a few. We do not have the space in Mellor Reserve to incorporate another activity such as a proposed pump track or skate park. My husband and I, Dan Searle, who is an apology tonight, is a PE teacher. He's committed to a healthy, active lifestyle, and our last school holidays was spent at Melrose in the Southern Flinders with our 2 daughters who love bike riding and have a pump track, and we utilised that facility. We are not supporting a skate park or a pump track, but we are opposed to it being in Mellor Reserve. One reason for that is that we are 10 metres from Mellor Reserve. It is opposite our house. And if you know Brand Street and Howard Street, and you probably do, because if you're local residents, you would have used them to cut through to reduce the time it would have taken from Portrush Road. And you would have done that, if I questioned the speed you would have been travelling. And you would have probably been breaking the speed limit of 50 kilometres per hour, my guess. I have been living in the area for over 13 years, and I have seen an increase in traffic, which is of great concern to me. The number of babies, young families. We have grandparents in this room, and I know if you've ever been on grandparent duty, trying to take a 2-year-old or a baby out of a car to Kinder Gym can be quite dangerous on Howard and Brand Street. To then overutilise this site with a pump track or a bike track would be detrimental to the area. We have already expressed our negative and preliminary feedback earlier this year when we were given the opportunity, and I thank Burnside Council for that consultation. And we do understand why other sites have been proposed. I would like to highlight on page 108 in tonight's minutes that the resident proximity was low. I would like to, or question, what low would be, considering there are houses that surround Mellor Park. parallel on Howard Street and Brand Street. And we are directly opposite with no off-street parking. I also question too if there has been any noise testing done, because we would be concerned, living so close to the park, of the noise level, and we already are challenged by basketball courts being used. Sorry, I'm talking too long. The safety of children moving to their vehicles from Kindergym, I've already talked about. We're at loss to think why Mellor Reserve would be a suitable location when you see all the other open spaces, for example, Kensington Park, Burnside Council, and all the others that are listed in the minutes in the documentation tonight. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate any questions.
Don't have anyone on my screen, so I would like to, I do now. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to thank you for coming along tonight and to letting us know how you feel as an immediate resident and homeowner to a proposed park. So thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you also. And now we are going to hear from Peter Gabbett. Is Peter here? Yes. You okay with the instructions on how it works, Mr. Gabbett?
I guess so, yes.
Okay.
I haven't been to this chamber before, so...
well, welcome.
Thank you.
It's lovely. It's always lovely to have new people together in this place so that you can hear how things operate and how they work.
As Emma just said, anyway, my name is Peter Gabbett. I live in Brand Street. I live opposite Mellor Reserve, and I'm here to speak essentially, as Emma did, about Mellor Reserve, not the other reserves. I support the opposition that she has to it for the similar reasons. One of the things that has griped me from the beginning when the consultation process occurred back in May was that council stated that Mellor Reserve was underutilised, and I don't wish to list all of the things that Emma listed again, but you know, we really refute that. In Mellor Reserve is used all the time. I look out my window and I see people there all the time, and I don't think that a skate park or a pump track is a suitable place. And the tennis courts, where it's likely that a pump track would be trialled, are also used extremely frequently. In fact, I don't know whether people have to book to use the tennis courts, but they are a prime council facility and they're in great use, and it would be I think it would be a terrible pity for them to be utilised even for a trial period. I think that is quite wrong. In council, I saw this in the last 2 days since being informed about tonight's meeting, but in colour photographs in the council material that I looked up on the website, it shows a pump track installed at Tumby Bay and another one at Murray Bridge, and the photos are probably available for people to see that. Both of those pump tracks are on huge acreages with ovals and clear reserves surrounding them. Mellor Reserve is nothing like that. It is a very compact park, and I think that's extremely misleading to show those pump track examples set in at Tumby Bay and Murray Bridge, where obviously acreage and it's not a built-up area, and I have those. I have that opposition to it, and I support the other comments about the narrow streets, the people who don't drive at the speed limit, and I see parents and grandparents taking their children out of their cars to go to the Kindergym, and I see cars going past on Brand Street and Howard Street at well in excess of the speed limit. They even raise dust on a bitumen road. So I would just sum up by saying I do not support it for Mellor Reserve. The reserve is too small. I suggest that council members might like to go out and have a look at the reserve compared with other places. I'd also noticed, and I said in my original submission, that the Adelaide City Council have a skate park located in Wakefield Road, opposite Victoria Park. It's 300 metres from the nearest residential accommodation on East Terrace. And it's in the parklands. And it's unfortunate that Burnside Council doesn't have, you know, the parks that we do have residents right around them. And it's a totally different demographic area. So that's what I have to say on that. So put me down as totally opposed. Would anyone like to ask me a question?
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for coming along tonight, Peter. You did articulate to me, I think in an email, that you were concerned about parking also in
Yes,
the streets. Is that also a concern for access to the
weekday
reserve?
parking, there are commuters who park in Brand Street and possibly in Howard Street, and they'll go off and catch the bus and what have you. It's a narrow street. Certainly on weekends it's quite crowded with people who are using, coming there to utilise the bus for passive activities, picnics, that sort of activity, and dog walking and that kind of thing. And I'd congratulate council for maintaining such the lawns, the grass, the mowing, the irrigation of it, the sprinklers is fantastic. I think that's it's well regarded in that instance. And tear it up and put concrete down to run a pump track, or to utilise, or to take over a tennis court, I think is a retrograde step. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr Garrett. Gabbett, sorry,
He's
apologies.
the bald guy.
Yeah. Well, it's a famous name.
Yes, yeah.
All right, thank you. The next person to hear from is Bronte Nixon. Is Bronte here? Are you okay with the instructions, Bronte?
Yes. Okay. Microphone's already on? Yep. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Bronte Nixon. I live in Burnside. My name is Bronte Nixon. I've lived in Burnside for 10 years and I have 3 kids at Burnside Primary School. I would like to support Council's proposed pump track trial, and I'd like to justify this support based upon my qualifications, occupation and experience. I'm the Principal Environmental Scientist and Urban Planner with a major engineering and infrastructure company. I have qualifications in biology, anthropology, urban and regional planning and environmental impact assessment, and I've been accredited by the Environment Institute of Australia and New Zealand. My job is to assess the environmental, land use and community impacts of developments and to determine the best locations for essential infrastructure projects. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've reviewed Council's pump track proposal. I'd like to endorse the process. However, I would also like to expand upon it by outlining my own assessment of the following shortlisted sites: Hazelwood Park, Kensington Gardens Reserve, Kensington Park Reserve, Mellor Reserve, Millers Reserve, Newland Park, Penfold Park and Tusmore Park. I assessed each site based upon the following 18 site selection factors: accessibility, facilities, co-located uses, parking, public transport, safety, passive surveillance, potential third place definition, shade, biophilic benefits, strategic land limitations, centroid establishment, availability of space, access to cafes, visual and noise absorption within the contextual landscape, adjacent uses, intrinsic feel, and complexity of approval. I scored the 8 reserves against each of these site selection factors. Based upon my assessment, Kensington Park Reserve came top with a score of 53 out of a total of 54 points. In second place was Kensington Gardens Reserve with a total of 52, followed by Hazelwood Park with a score of 44, and Newland Park with a score of 41. Mellor Reserve is my least preferred site. In addition to this exercise, I believe that the proposal aligns well with the following council strategic planning documents: the Strategic Community Plan, Connected Community Strategy, Hub Precinct Strategy, Playground Strategy, and Open Place Strategy. It also aligns well with the following state planning documents: the current 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide, including the open space and sport and recreation subplans, the City of Burnside Development Plan, and state planning policies 1, 2 and 6 under the new PDI Act. To further support the pump track proposal, I would like to highlight 2 core pillars of urban planning. The first is that of social capital, which is all about the relationship networks of people who live in a community. The more social capital we have, the healthier the person and community. The second is the concept of the third place, a planning theory whereby the first place is your home, the second place is your work or school, and the third place are those places where you go to feel connected and less isolated. Examples of third places include cafes, libraries, and dog parks. Importantly, third places help build social capital for those members of the community who need it the most. Burnside has great facilities, but these facilities do not cater for everyone. We have a lot of tennis courts, cricket pitches and playgrounds, but we do not have any skate parks or pump tracks. These sports are becoming increasingly popular in Australia, and kids in Burnside deserve the same safe and local access to these facilities as kids in other council areas. Pump tracks are recognised third places where kids can go to be healthy, to be out in the environment and to build social capital. This is especially crucial for kids that feel isolated, for kids who do not conform to traditional sports, and for kids who need to know that others share their values. When I drive home from work, I go past the skate park in the Eastern Parklands, and it's heartening to see so many different groups of kids from many different cultures and backgrounds participating in a sport they all love, building connections and friendships and investing in social capital. I think it's important for us to remember that Council has a responsibility to all members of the community, particularly our most vulnerable groups. Anything that gets kids outside, participating in society, is a good thing. It's also good to remember that Burnside's parks and reserves are for everyone. I truly believe that the pump track trial for Burnside demonstrates Council's willingness to plan for all demographic groups. It demonstrates that Burnside is a progressive and inclusive council that values its residents and provides facilities for everyone in an environment that is safe, healthy and connected. Thank you.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Bronte, for coming in. I was very interested in your evaluation process, but I heard your top 4.
Yes.
I think it was Kensington Park, Kensington Gardens Reserve,
Yes.
Hazelwood Park, Newland Park tennis courts. What was 5th, 6th and 7th?
Yeah.
Did you
I
go?
can read them
I
out,
wouldn't mind
if that's
knowing
all right.
that because of your qualifications.
Okay, let me just, okay, so first, and look, and I can go through it later, obviously, because I'd ranked them and
I just
assigned
like to
them
know
all the
5,
number.
6, 7, 8 if I could.
So the top was Kensington Park, second Kensington Gardens Reserve, third Hazelwood Park, fourth Newland Park, fifth Tusmore Park, sixth Penfold Park McGill, seventh Millers Reserve, 8th Mellor Reserve. And like I said, I'm incredibly supportive of this proposal. I really am. I think it's great. I don't believe the Beulah Park site is ideal. I don't.
Councillor Carbone.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and I too was equally impressed by your ranking, along with Councillor Dawes. Kensington Park, Kensington Gardens, I agree. Hazelwood Park, I think we'd all get murdered if that ever happened.
That's
okay.
challenging, yeah.
But Miller Reserve, I was very curious because you gave that a ranking of, I think it was number 7.
Which one, sorry?
Miller?
Miller, yep.
I was just wondering if you could maybe highlight why that rated so lowly in particular.
I'll just look at some of the low rankers. So what I looked at was things like general accessibility, public transport. So when I talk about public transport, I talk about it from a transport modelling point of view. So transport modellers and transport planners consider public transport, you must have a stop within 400 to 800 metres. That's generally how far people will walk. So I looked at all that kind of stuff and weighed it up. Miller's ranked low.
What were the key weaknesses?
Key weaknesses. I put safety as a bit of a low one for that. So what I did was I went to every single one of these sites, and I've been to some of them before with my kids, but not all of them. And I walked into it, and some of them, straight away you can see that this is a great site. Others, you walk in there and it doesn't feel quite right. And that's what I mean by intrinsic feel. So for Miller's, it felt slightly isolated. If I was a parent, would I want my kids playing there alone? Probably not. Whereas I weighed up against other sites like Kensington Gardens and Kensington Park, just felt a bit better. There's a number of other ones as well, if you want me to go through the other low points for that one, but it's up to you.
Maybe just one or two.
Let's have a look. So again, it was Miller's. Available space within the reserve ranked low. Access to cafes ranked low. Oh, and visual and noise absorption within the contextual landscape. By that, when we're doing visual impact assessments for major developments, also noise assessments, we look at the wider context of the site and we think about how well that development can be absorbed within the site. And I don't think it can be well absorbed in that site. For example, the Beulah Park site, it would not be absorbed at all. Whereas Kensington Gardens and Kensington Park, it just aligns so much better with those sites. Yeah.
All right, next is Councillor Lemon.
I'd like to thank you for such an outstanding display of civic mindedness. I am completely grateful that you've used all your talents, all your experience, all your education, and you've actually applied it to this as a problem. And there's no billable hours for us. I am so grateful. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking this so thoroughly in such a wonderful way.
There's an invoice in the mail.
Oh, okay.
If you could leave your card behind.
Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, look, I concur. I mean, the amount of effort you've put into here, it's fantastic. I was just curious, though, that one of the issues for mine is we have a discussion about a skate park which was primarily aimed at teenagers north or up, and we're also talking about a pump track which is primarily probably, under 12. Yeah. Your analysis, which one did it focus on? Because they're probably not the same.
It's actually, my analysis is looking at both. What I did was, if a park couldn't absorb a pump track, then I also looked at would it also absorb a skate park, a bigger skate park. And look, I have to say I'm incredibly supportive of skate parks, mainly because I grew up in a similar situation to yourself. I'm not from a higher socioeconomic area. I feel privileged to live here, and I've seen the good things that these skate parks can do for communities. I really have. I'm from a poorer part of the Northern Territory, and they do wonderful things up there. And I think one of the other things that I notice is that because I drive home through the parklands every day, like I said in my talk, I go past the skate park and I see older kids helping younger kids. I see, some of the students that come over, the international students come over, and I see other kids helping them how to skate. Like, you just see really amazing things. There are so many opportunities for these parks. I don't know whether that really answered your question.
No, probably not, but it was okay. It was good. Gave you an opportunity.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for coming along. That was a very interesting presentation. I too was a bit confused about the difference between skate park and pump tracks, and I think that's generally got mixed up. Yep. One of the things that I'm also not clear about is safety. do parents expect that they'll drop their kids off and just leave them there? Because you were talking about unsupervised.
No.
The assessments you'd made in terms of unsupervised
No, so my
use.
understanding...
And I just wondered, because I didn't visualise that parents would leave their children there. I think that would be highly risky.
No, it would be cheaper than childcare, but no, it wouldn't be something that happens. So pump tracks obviously are for younger children, so parents are going to stay there as well. With the bigger, more permanent developments, you might get the older teenagers going there. Safety is more about, you know, if you're a parent and you're sitting down and having coffee, like we used to when we were in mothers' groups and our kids would be running around, how much can you to what extent can you visualise them, and how safe do you feel with them running around in an area? And when you've got a landscape or a park that's got different segmented sections, like some of them did, to me, you don't feel quite as comfortable or quite as safe. You want to be able to see, you don't want neighbours straight away adjoining you, but you want to at least see that you've got a community around you, you feel more linked with it, and you just feel a little bit safer with it. It comes down to the definition of intrinsic feel. But safety, I also looked at lighting as well, and I also looked at the need to cross roads, lighting, steep slopes, that sort of thing. So, okay, supervision. Yeah, but no, we wouldn't be dropping young children off and leaving them. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for coming in and for being so informative, and we all learned a great deal from your presentation. Thank you. And the next person is Annette Hurley. Mrs. Hurley, you okay with the instructions on how it operates by now?
Yes, I am, thanks, yes. My name is Annette Hurley. I live in Tusmore, Kennaway Street, adjoining Tusmore Park, backing onto Tusmore Park. And I'm here on my own account, but I've spoken to many people on my walks since I heard the news late Friday. And what astounded people that I've spoken to, firstly, is that this trial is proposed in a park where so many people live on the boundary. And I did my own count of the 4 parks recommended, and I make I make no recommendation, or I have no view about the other parks and their suitability. But by my count, of the 4 parks recommended for this trial on page 800, Kensington Gardens Reserve has 0 houses sharing a boundary. Mellor Reserve has 2 houses sharing a boundary. Miller Reserve has 2 houses sharing a boundary. Tusmore Park has 38 houses or units sharing an actual physical boundary with the park at the boundary fence, and there are many more houses adjacent across the road or nearby. The original consultation report, which we weren't a part of, said that noise would be negligible at about 15 metres from the pump track. It is nearly impossible to put that track in Tusmore Park at a distance of less than 15 metres from a house fence, unless it goes right in the centre of the park, where most of the normal activities of the park go on. Putting it on the tennis courts would put it at less than 1 metre from the houses alongside of that park. So it's effectively right on the boundary. Secondly, we were amazed at the proposal to interfere with what is already a very well-used and very popular park. There is true unstructured play in that park, as seen by those of us who walk in it every day. It's a green and treed area used extensively by children and adults. Children play games in the creeks and the grassed areas, and it's well used all year round, including the courts, and it is extremely busy from November to May. And in fact, there's a shortage of space. We often see people queuing to get a picnic spot. And I believe that there should not be a large man-made structure in the middle of that park, taking away space for tennis or games or simply exploring and doing your own thing. Thirdly, when we had the opportunity to do more research, we really queried some of the facts cited behind the decision. On page 800, number 48 says, administration chose sites with the greatest alignment to evaluation criteria. Not the criteria we just heard, but obviously their own criteria. But there is one very key error in that. On the report on page 808 lists Tusmore Park as low resident proximity, and I just demonstrated to you previously that that is not so. By definition, by the administration's own definition on page 810, Tusmore Park is high resident proximity. That is, the park shares the majority of its boundaries with houses except for a small area on Stirling Street. Also, there was off-street parking. There are 17 parks next to the Lions bookshop and across the road from the Australasian Community Church. These are very fully occupied when Lions books are open and for the church on the weekends. And there is another small area carved out of Rivington Street with 7 car parks, 3 of which were occupied all morning today and are very popular when the courts are used and on weekends. So this hardly meets the criteria of a designated car park for the park. It appears from the documentation that residents around other parks were consulted about this project. We were not. We had not had that opportunity. If this proposal goes ahead, I can assure you just from the brief consultations that I've had walking around the park that there will be protests and complaints from the 43 residents immediately adjacent to this park and probably more from residents in the general area. And if that trial goes ahead in such an inappropriate site, it is possible that there will be such a level of complaint that it might jeopardise the whole Pump Park project, which we don't want to happen.
I don't have anyone asking a question, so can I please... Oh, sorry, we've got someone, yes? Councillor Day.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming along tonight to articulate about Tusmore Park. I just want to clarify about community consultation. You haven't been involved in any round at all of consultation about either a skate park or a pump track in that locale?
No, we had no idea because the original consultation was designed around other parks. And I was surprised to notice that other parks, for example, Penfold Park, I think, was listed as part of the strategy for a skate park, but was not listed on this. Tusmore Park seems to be chosen, certainly in the papers or on the website. I couldn't find any reason why Tusmore Park was chosen, but we were not consulted as part of that original consultation. And as I said, we didn't, people and the residents in the area didn't know until late Friday afternoon that this was occurring.
Councillor Cornish.
Annette, thank you very much for coming in, and thank you very much for doing the assessment of the counts of the properties adjoining. It's once again very useful data to have in the chamber, so thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, and thank you, former Senator Hurley, for coming in.
Thank you. Is that a problem?
Okay. Thank you very much for coming, Mrs. Hurley. And our next pair are Stacey and Brodie Bell. I believe, young man, Brodie, you're going to be the spokesperson. So if you'd just like to say your name and what suburb you live in, thank you.
Hello, my name is Brodie Bell and I live in Burnside. My thoughts about a pump track and hopefully one day a skate park are that...
Excuse me just a minute. Can you just turn the microphone down towards... That's better. I think we might get better volume for people to hear. You can start again. All right, start again and we'll start the time again.
My thoughts about a pump track and hopefully one day a skate park are that a lot of people play inside games, including video games, TV and many more. but a pump track might encourage people to get outside. There are 10 football ovals in the area of Kensington Park, Burnside, Norwood and Glenunga. There are also lots of places to play cricket, basketball, tennis and other ball sports. I and lots of other people who live in the area like wheel sports. That's wheel sports, not real sports. I know there's one option at Ridge Park Skate Park, but my skills are not good enough for that big bowl yet. People think there's naughty behaviour in extreme style sports, but there's naughty behaviour in all sports. A quick Google search will show you that. But there's also a lot of good in all sports. For example, when I go to the skate park in the city, a lot, when I fall off my scooter, someone always helps me up and asks if I'm okay. If I break something on my scooter, older skaters always help me fix it. I've made new friends there too, and we ride together and we're respectful of the park. If I want to go for a scoot in my area right now, it's on the road, and that's not safe and it's not good for improving my skills. So as a community member, I would like to ask for support and the kind of hobbies I have. Thank you for listening.
I'd just like to say thank you first. Very well done, young man. Councillor Hughes.
I'm first. Brodie, thanks for coming.
Councillor Hubel. That's Councillor Hughes. No, you're both off. Okay. Press again. Councillor Hubel.
Brodie, thanks for coming out tonight. You're an absolute legend. I can also see a few of your schoolmates around you as well, and it's great to see the kids coming and having their voices heard. And the fact that you're doing that at such a young age is absolutely awesome, and make sure you keep it up. So thanks for coming out.
Now, Councillor Hughes.
Oh, I can't say it as well as Paul did. Well done, thank you.
There doesn't appear to be anyone else on the list, so thank you very much, Brodie and Mum. Did you wish to say something to Mum?
Is that okay?
Okay, yes, please.
I've just made a couple of notes in response to the other speakers. So
You didn't use the whole 5 minutes, so I'm sure.
Exactly, you did well. So just as Mr. Gabbett said, Burnside doesn't have the same demographic necessarily as the city, but it's quite clear that within the demographic of Burnside, there are heaps of people that really want to participate in skate park activities and wheel sports, and really should have the opportunity, same as those people who have the opportunity for ball sports, tennis, football and so on. And it does sound that Emma and Dan and others are not opposed to the skate park or pump track altogether, which is really nice for us who are in support of it to hear. And we do tend to agree, and with Bronte's expert opinion about the parks, that obviously Mellor Reserve isn't a good option, but Kensington Park Reserve is. So that was all. Thanks.
Thank you both of you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Now we have our final deputation, which is from Julian Robbins or Robins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's quite a surprise to me to be on the deputations. I was told that I wasn't, so thank you very much for affording the opportunity. Firstly, a few thank yous. Rochelle, Michael, please don't stop doing what you're doing. Fantastic work. Bronte, thank you very much for all of your hard work put in and common sense backed up with engineering and science. I guess all I can do,
would you
because
just before you do, could you just state your name and suburb?
Yeah.
That's all.
My name is Julian Robbins. I live directly opposite Mellor Reserve Park. I was quite alarmed that I had to be informed by another resident only 38 to 40 hours ago, otherwise I wouldn't have been here this evening. I am in favour of a pump track and or skate park in and around Burnside, but not in Mellor Reserve. Our family was initially in Stellar against the proposal of a pump wheel skate park of any kind at Mellor Reserve. We have 2 children of the age group of its intended target market, but we're still opposed to it. The park is too small, too close to residences to accommodate such an installation. The park is used by families, activity groups for gatherings, birthday parties, community groups and the like. If this installation were to go ahead, the park would become too crowded and lose its appeal. Quite often and more frequently during daylight savings hours, because I live directly opposite the tennis courts and the basketball court, I need to ask park users to cease playing basketball, which occurs right up until 10:30 p.m. at night. As the basketball can be heard bouncing in my house, my lounge room is approximately 75 metres away, not the 15 metres of noise pollution that Annette mentioned in her report. As it keeps my children awake. In addition, teenagers congregate on the tennis courts in the evening. This is not about the pump park. The users will use it during daylight hours. Teenagers congregate on the tennis courts in the evening as there are places to sit, and their loud conversation can also still be heard in and around the park. Why? Because the park is bordered by trees on 3 sides and creates a nice little round bowl for noise. The McDonald's Trinity Gardens is less than 200 metres away, open until 11 o'clock most all nights and midnight on Saturday and Friday nights. We believe a pump park and, in addition to that, On the Run have just opened up a 24-hour Krispy Kreme on the corner of Portrush Road. Again, this would also attract people at night, not discounting the children during the day using this park. I believe a pump, wheel or skate park of any kind at Mellor Reserve offers a further attraction for teenagers to gather, whether they're utilising it or not. Couple that with the noise of skateboards and scooters if they were using it, especially at night, whilst tricks and jumps are being performed, will further aggravate residents living around the park. I'd also like to have it noted that I'm a former BMX junior and semi-pro rider. I am all for parks, exactly for the inclusion that Michael displayed quite enigmatically before. I'm for this park, but not at Mellor Reserve. Thank you.
Don't have anyone wishing to ask a question, so can I thank you? Yes, I do. Oh, suddenly, Councillor Hench.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much, because if we don't hear from the residents about the impact on their amenity, we would never know about these nuances about these locales, especially with businesses and the movement of teenagers at night to do with on the runs or whatever business at night. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. We are going to move that item, which is item number 13.10 on page 791 to debate now, so that all those who have come out of interest and deputation can hear the debate and be here for the final decision, or the decision that comes out of tonight's meeting. So I'm looking for, looks like it's Councillor Hubel. You wish to move a motion?
I would, thank you. You bear with me a moment.
And I just welcome to, Mr Schroeder and Ms Burns to the table in the centre, who are the staff who have been responsible for putting this report together, and that's mainly not only for the people in the gallery but also for people who are watching from home.
Thank you, Mayor, and again thank you to the gallery for coming out and being part of all this and showing your support. Read the motion that the report be received. Number 2, that council purchase a portable pump track and conduct a 12-month rotating trial across the following 4 locations. Number 1, Newland Reserve. Number 2, Kensington Park. Number 3, Miller Reserve. And number 4, the Civic Centre car park, which I think will please 3 of our deputies this evening. Number 3, that the pump track be promoted in schools via social media, relevant and suitable. So I was just reading off that, Rob. Bear with me a moment. That the pump track be promoted in schools via social media, relevant and suitable clubs and sporting organisations in the surrounding area of each location. Number 4, that the use of smart sensors are investigated to monitor the pump track's use at various times and intervals, along with regular inspections of the facility by council administration. That the results of the pump track trial upon completion be presented to council with recommendations of whether to retain the pump track as a permanent facility. And number 6, that the administration continues discussions with Campbelltown City Council, the City of Adelaide, City of Norwood, Payneham and St Peters and the City of Unley in relation to a regional facility, and reports back to council on the progress of these discussions in March 2020. Speaking to this now. The August meeting saw great support as well as opposition to the idea of a wheel sports amenity. Major opposition was at the proposed locations, in particular Kensington Gardens, had nearby residents concerned about a range of issues. It's clear that while there is generalised support for a wheel sport facility within the city, the precise nature of what this would actually be, the size, type, target clientele, etc., needs clarifying. And there are certain concerns from residents that also need to be addressed. This pump track trial was agreed to in August and will go a long way to demonstrating the benefits of wheel sport facilities that the supporters have proposed. It will allow for community demand to be demonstrated, which is a crucial element to the ongoing talks with neighbouring councils. I don't view the introduction of a roaming pump track as contradictory with the development of a high-level park. As for the locations, I'd like to go through the rationale for these. These recommendations in the report are separate from the August report that was looking at permanent facilities, because this is a temporary rotation that broadened the scope for inclusion and speaks to why Tasmore Park, for example, didn't receive consultation. These 4 locations will see this facility for 3 months each, with slight deviation from the recommendation of administration. I've not chosen a few of the sites for, I think, within this chamber, fairly obvious reasons. But I do want to talk about why I've chosen what I have. I believe this trial needs to access the community, and it needs to be easy for people to use the park, see the park, and become familiar with using it. Newland Park has existing traffic by young children from both the kindergarten drop-offs and Burnside Primary School, which is just down Lockwood Road. This is a location that's highly visible by our target audience, and it's in a location convenient for many of our target customers. Kensington Park, I believe this, I understand this location is subject to agreement with Pembroke School, but I can only imagine a favourable outcome in that regard. And while this proposed location perhaps doesn't have the visibility of Newland and the others, it is geographically varied. And as someone who has used that park since the age of about 7, I think the temporary installation provided welcome variance for people in the area. Miller Reserve I was very happy to consider, as it is in my own ward, in Beaumont. I grew up in this area and I visit this reserve regularly with my own children. The founding principle behind Miller Reserve was its use for recreational purposes, and I think this is an excellent location. I think a wheel sport facility in the city of Burnside is an excellent idea. The tricky thing before us is choosing these 4 locations. I hope you'll support the proposal I've made and urge you to support this motion.
Councillor Hughes, are you wishing to second this?
I wish to second this
And do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
No, I'll speak now. That's
Oh, no.
fine.
Sorry, I've just remembered.
Yes.
They pointed out we can't do that yet.
We haven't changed the procedures yet. Thank you. I just want to start by thanking everyone from the community for coming in and giving their views. It is important that we hear from everyone on these issues that obviously will affect a range of people. And I just want to thank the staff for their efforts in terms of developing the report. I did want to start by talking about some of the risks that are highlighted in the report. There is a risk that the temporary placement of the track will not be supported by residents living around the trial sites. We've heard that this evening. There's the risk that the facility may not be adequately patronised during the period. I think that's what the whole point of the actual trial is to see whether there is support within the community for this type of facility. Now, I've added a few more risks that I think the staff have left off, and I have spoken with Aaron and Kelly about this. I think there's a risk that we could wait, consult with other councils and still not find a site, and we may not get other councils on board. So what we can do is actually move forward with something, and it may not be the ultimate solution of where we want to head as a council. I think one of the best things that's come about from this Will Park proposal is that there is a whole new group of people that are engaging with local council. At school pickup, I regularly get asked for updates. What is happening with that Will Park? There's a group of parents who are getting engaged. Their children are understanding the processes that we go through. And I think it's really important now that they understand that to have an impact within their community, they need to come and be heard. So I thank you for coming and being present this evening. I did want to share a quick story with you. A few weeks ago, I ventured out of the Kensington Park ward and headed into Burnside ward. As I walked through Hubby Court, I saw a group of young children on their mountain bikes on the weekend. They were making their own fun, making jumps in the park and using an existing facility that was not created as a Will Park. There is demand for this facility. This is what this demonstrates for me. If the children don't have this type of facility, they will go about and try and make their own facility, whether that be in an unsafe manner in your street and run the risk of getting hit by cars, whether it's doing something that may be perceived as destructive in a local park because we don't have those facilities there. So I think that proves that really there is a demand for the facility. And this trial would ultimately, hopefully, give us real data that we can use to see where the demand is and see whether that demand increases over time. And I do appreciate that a pump track is completely different to a Will Park, but I guess my thoughts on why we should install this apparent short-term measure is, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but this just might be as good as we're going to get in the city of Burnside. We might spend years and years and years working with local councils and we might not get any further than this. So I think this is an opportunity that if I didn't jump on board now, at the end of 4 years, I'd be thinking I've wasted one opportunity to make one small step towards something that may be beneficial to the kids in our community. As I've mentioned, it will give us real data, and by using a range of different sites across the council, it lets us see whether there's any differences around the whole community. And it also will give our neighbouring councils a chance to attend this facility. So by putting this out there, it gives City of Norwood a chance to come and use this facility, Campbelltown Council as well. And it also gives us an opportunity to monitor behaviour and any issues that are perceived that could come with this type of infrastructure. So this week I shared with elected members and also on my Facebook page a video of my children using a pump track. And I appreciate that there may be many people around the table who don't have a need to take their children to a pump track, and I shared that with everyone this week. And I think the main thing that it demonstrated is that there are a range of people that can use this type of facility, a range of ages, and I think the way that they all work together, these young children coming on and off the track, really demonstrated, I think, some of the social aspects that have been talked about this evening. This week has been 1 year since the counting of the elections, and I guess personally I've reflected over the last week about what I stood for when I ran and who would have voted for me in the community. And I wanted to be a voice for families when I ran and people like me. So that's why I'll support Paul's motion this evening. He did throw a little bit of a curveball in there at the last minute, but I will support the motion and I hope that everyone else gets on board as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carbone.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I am once again delighted to support Councillor Hubel's motion. Your Worship, councillors, like a lot of children growing up in Burnside in the 80s and 90s, I lived my weekends on my BMX, riding through local parks and riding backwards and forwards to friends' houses. It was what we did. There were no computer games, no iPads. We rode and we had the time of our lives. On occasion, my father would put our bikes in the back of the family station wagon and we'd head down to the wheel park in the South Parklands. There we got to ride over bumps, down hills, and it basically took it up a notch compared to riding on flat surfaces. It was fun, and the adrenaline made us want to ride more and more. When I close my eyes and I think of my childhood, these are one of the fondest of memories. When I was 17, and I'm now 38, I met with various elected members for a school report. But I asked, when are we going to have our own local wheel park? I was told in 1999 that a report was being done, the matter was being investigated, and the location was being considered. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? This will come to no shock of any of you, but nothing ever happened. Fast forward 9 years in 2008, and I proposed a wheel park in the Constable Hyde Reserve. Once again, nothing ever happened. 21 years. 21 years! And the 17-year-old inside me still finds hope that one day, just one day, we may have our own wheel park. After 21 years, I've learnt quite clearly that the characters may change, but the script always remains the same. The script is littered with the words of, I support a wheel park, just not in my park. The script is plagued with words of fear, misinformation and prejudice that include crime, gangs, graffiti, music and so forth. Now, while I'm not racked with the idea that this is just a trial and the locations in my opinion aren't ideal, I'd still like to see Kensington Gardens in there, for example. This is the closest the city of Burnside has ever come to the realisation of a 21-year-old dream. A dream that has been called for in countless community surveys, petitions and advice from various youth advisory committees. This council has undertaken more consultation on this issue than any other issue in the last 10 years. Not since the Chelsea cinema debacle. This is the issue of the decade. This is a step in the right direction towards achieving a 21-year-old dream. Let's get this trial up and running and let's get some real data back to this council. This trial will once and for all prove the demand and once and for all put fears to rest. Our council survey of 800 people backed the wheel park. My internal poll of 1,700 people backed the wheel park. Parents back the wheel park. Health professionals, teachers, anyone fighting childhood obesity backs the wheel park. I say no more delays. 21 years of delays and reports, I say no more. Joint ventures with neighbouring councils, I think are cruel and misleading. Children in Burnside want their wheel park in Burnside, not Thorndon Park. We have our own pool. We have our own library. We have our own cinema. So why is a wheel park any different or special that we can't have our own right here in Burnside? No more delays, no more reports, no more strategies, and no more talk. 21 years, let's get this trial started and let's build our wheel park. Tonight, this council says yes.
Councillor Dawes.
It's always difficult to follow Councillor Carbone. I'm a different generation to Councillor Carbone. You probably can gather from my hairstyles. But I do remember that I got my first calculator in Year 9. And we used to have logbooks. I hope anybody can remember that in the audience. Logbooks to undergo complicated calculations. Yes, you remember that, don't you? Yes, Councillor Figure. And I played with a wooden tennis racket and white tennis balls. So I do remember those days. Anyhow, I just want to thank Kelly for all of her research. and she's done a very good job there. I want to acknowledge Councillor Davis for his work with 2 of our councils and our neighbouring councils, and hopefully a third next week. Just a couple important points which have only been mentioned, but the City of Burnside has a greater percentage of 5 to 17-year-olds compared to the Greater Adelaide. We haven't mentioned that before. It's in the paper that was written by Kelly. And we are testing the community's appetite, and I do like Councillor Hughes saying we're going to get real data. I think that's important to us because the stats in August were interpreted both ways by the for and against. I do want to put in something in there for the future. There's still some flexibility here. We've chosen 4, well, the motion has put in 4 with the curveball. I agree there's a curveball in there. But I do like the curveball, though, I must say, Councillor Hubel. But we can have some flexibility. If this goes well, I don't mind increasing the number of venues, having a shorter time period for each trial. That's got to come back to this council, though. So I just want to leave that there as a thought. Just a couple of points from our ward. It's very pleasing to have the 4 locations in 4 different wards. I think that's very, very important. When we say Newland Reserve, that's the Newland Harcourts. It's not the grassed area, because I don't want the baseball club and the cricketers and the footballers being concerned about that. It's on the Harcourts that we're talking about that. I must admit, I could only find 3 that I would have supported until the curveball came in. So I do think the Civic Park Centre is a very, very good 4th option, Councillor Hubel. But I am going to support this motion. I think it's the way forward, and I think it's a good way forward. So thank you for putting it forward, Councillor Hubel.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say I very much love skating. I did that, my roller skates down my driveway at Councillor Carbone and on the street. I've done all of that. And but I really cannot support this motion. I'll have to foreshadow that I will propose another motion if this doesn't get up. Now, the reason I'm saying this is that we have missed something really fundamentally important. I've had so many people call me in the last 24 hours saying that they are surprised. We've heard a gentleman here saying he only heard in the last 24 hours. We have surprised people. Do we want to surprise them even further with a plan that we've just sort of put together on the back of envelope tonight? No. We can't do that to our community. So I propose that I foreshadow another plan, another motion, that we do have a plan for a trial, but firstly we engage with the community about a plan for a trial. So if we're targeting particular locations, then we speak to the people in that area first, raise awareness, get information. We've got more information tonight. Because we put this motion into the agenda papers, people started, speaking up and giving us more information about their locale. So that's what I foreshadow is an alternative motion. Thank you.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think we've had enough consultation about this. I'm a grandma and I support this fully, and I love the idea of those 4 different venues because I was agonising over it, because I know that I'm already on record for stating that Kensington Gardens Reserve is not a suitable location, and also similarly for Tusmore Park. It's the birthday party capital of Adelaide, especially on weekends, wall-to-wall children and grandparents, etc., and the residents have enough to contend with there. So I'm fully in favour of the curveball of the Civic Centre car park. Excellent idea. And let's do it. I've got some figures. 3,685 children in this area, aged between 5 and 11. Let's give them a go. It's time to provide them with an outlet, and not that the pump track will be limited to this age group, but they're more likely to use it. And hopefully the 3,795 aged between 12 and 17 will one day be able to exercise and socialise on a permanent wheel park in our area. So I'm fully in support.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question. It's mentioned in the report, but I'm not clear about how the measurements will be made. As far as I know, we don't have any smart sensors at the moment, and so I wonder what, one, I'd like to know the costs of this whole project, but also, or this whole proposal for us, and also how smart sensors will be used and the measurements will be made, because I'm quite confused about that.
Through the Mayor. So we still need to work out exactly how we'll use those sensors. There are a variety of different types. They range in price. The medium range is about $750 per sensor, so they're relatively cheap. Some of them work on counting people's mobile phones, like as actual numbered devices in a vicinity. There are other sort of counters that will actually count people that walk through, for example, a doorway or a gate and things like that. So the kind of sensors you would use would depend a little bit on each particular location.
And do we have these yet? Do we have the technology and do we use it? And what will be the total cost of this trial?
It's actually the next person to speak is actually Councillor Piggott. You might like to come back with another question because your name's gone off there now. Councillor Piggott?
Thank you. Look, I'm going to speak against this motion. I feel we've got to this place through, an odd path, I suppose, if I could say that. Before I get started, I'd also like to express concern that, although not included in the recommendation, because nothing was, that Kensington Gardens Reserve came very close to the top. I'm pleased that it's not in the motion now, but given that it was very specifically spoken about last time and in a motion of council for, I accept a permanent skate park, but to have it come close to the top of the list for this exercise, I think was not acceptable. Having said that, I think Councillor Carbone threw the survey at us and what's been asked for, and your own report has talked about, or the report talks about the survey where people were asked specifically around youth and what they would do for 12 to 25-year-olds. And that's when the skate park came up with the 38%. And that's what we debated last time, but it's not what we're debating now. What we're now looking at is actually another piece of playground equipment for mine. It again in the report talks about focus towards 5 to 11-year-olds. I actually think if this had come to council as an exercise where we'd like to put a piece of equipment like this into one of our playgrounds or into one of our parks, and it wasn't tied to the skate park argument, I don't think we'd have had anyone in the gallery. I think it probably would be something that, because it doesn't have the same connotations to it that a skate park does. To look on it as a trial for what a skate park might eventually do, to put it into Newland Reserve, for instance, and say, well, it didn't have the issues that people thought what a skate park would have, that's not right, because it is going to be largely supervised children with their parents there. It's not going to be unsupervised people who are, rightly or wrongly, whether it's unfounded or not, that's largely where the issues with skate parks are coming from, why people living next to them are not happy about having them there. It may not be right, but that is what's driving that. So I think we're kidding ourselves if we think after 12 months of having a piece of equipment like this in 4 different locations gives us a relatively lack of resident outcry. We are kidding ourselves if we think, well, that's okay then, we can drop a skate park into one of those. It's just not going to happen, in my view, and I think it's actually not appropriate that we should do it. I do feel that what it's doing by putting the pump track in is actually, it's allowing us, Councillor Hughes said this might be as good as it gets. Well, it might be, and perhaps, if we pass this tonight, we can sit back and put the skate park aside for 12 months, 18 months. I think it gets in the way of number 6, actually, of actually trying to make something really happen, to deliver a skate park for kids of an older age. I remember Vicky Chapman when she was actually defending Henry and I up at Penfold Park one day in regard to the skate park, and she said a comment about, it'd be good to have stuff for teenagers before they actually can drive themselves. And while I wasn't particularly in favour, and I'm probably still not, I thought that was actually a valid point. But this is not it. this is actually something catering for, I know we must have 3,600 of them, of kids between 5 and 11, but catering for a demographic I feel is actually really well catered for already. And it doesn't actually get you any further in getting the skate park that people actually want. So I'm not in favour of it.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. I will be supporting the proposal, and I think it's a good proposal. Firstly, let me, I don't think this has been touched on yet, but the cost of the skate park is quite good in that it would cost $60,000, but it's an asset that my understanding is that we can actually quite easily, if we wanted to continue with it or dispose of it at a later stage, then it would actually be quite easy, in my view, or understanding, to recover that cost. And so in many ways it's investing in a facility that can then be moved on and reuse that money somewhere else. In terms of the consultation, we have consulted extensively, and I think that this council has all the information it needs to make the decision tonight whether to proceed or not. We've done a number of statistically valid surveys, and I think there's been a huge response from the community in relation to a potential wheel park within the city of Burnside. And so I personally feel very able, especially given the report of the administration tonight, in making this decision. I thank them for going through in detail the 23 options, and I note that the Civic Centre is on page 805. And if you look at the criteria there, it's not as extensive as some of our residents perhaps might do, but it's certainly something that I can understand quite easily. And I think that the Civic Centre is a good addition to this motion. Coming to the question of whether we should actually proceed down this path. In my view, the city lacks a facility for that age group specifically that a pump track is catering to. So it is an end in and of itself, providing a service or providing a new service service provision for that age group. And I think that age group will certainly benefit from it. I think, I've been with Rochelle and her children off to Prospect to see how they used the park there. And I think it would be very difficult as a parent having to travel such a long way when kids, at that age, they do have shorter attention spans, and so they have a good go of it at a start, and then gradually they start to fall. And I think as a parent having to travel such a long distance to get them outside and engage, it can be quite difficult. And so I can certainly see the benefits in having something close by for our parents, especially of younger children, and not just aiming for teenagers in and of itself, or 16 or 18-year-olds, but I think it does actually plug a hole that this city does have in relation to the service provision of that age group. And in particular, one of our Brodie, I think, spoke before, and I think that Brodie would certainly benefit from such a facility and the generations after him. The other question is whether this detracts from the campaign, I suppose, that I'm trying to push and the work that I'm doing in terms of trying to get a regional facility of something more substantial. And to that, I think that this is an excellent complement to that. I note that when I went to Norwood, one of the councillors said, are you will Burnside do a trial? I said it was something we'd probably consider, that there's a report coming back on the 12th of November, and they said that they were very eager to see how our community reacted to a pump track and the provision there, in terms of they can use our data or use our trial to investigate how that would potentially impact on their communities as well. And so the data we collect and the feedback that we have from our residents, I think, will certainly be a complement to point 6 in terms of pursuing a regional facility going forward. And not only that, but it definitely shows that we are serious about pursuing this, that we are more than willing to put it in our backyard, and that we have the support of our residents from across the city of Burnside. I know 56% of our residents say that they were, of those consulted, were in favour of putting in a wheel park. I think that these 4 locations are excellent spots to consider the trial, and like, so I wouldn't say that I'd be necessarily disappointed, but if we had that facility, like Councillor Hughes said, I think that would certainly plug a hole in the demographics and the service levels that we provide for that demographic, which in our community survey continually comes back to say that we aren't doing enough for that age group, probably because they don't vote. And so I think that this will be a great complement to that. So I hope that you can support it tonight. And I will be going to Campbelltown with Rochelle next week, next Tuesday, to listen to their debate on potentially doing something at the Paradise Interchange. And I hope that their council will consider us as a partnership here to pursue point 6, and I'm hopeful that will continue to happen. So I hope that you support this motion.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monceau. I do agree with a lot of what Councillor Piggott actually said, and I didn't initially vote for the previous motion, and I'm on record not voting for the trial. I have the same concerns that it's the wrong demographic that we're trying to target with a skate park and the service provision thereof. However, that being said, I do see it as a piece of playground equipment, like any other playground, but this one's quite novel because it can get transported from one park to another. It does hit probably a demographic that the general playgrounds are currently catering for, but it gives an activity that's slightly different than swings and monkey bars and climbing. So I will actually be supporting this motion tonight. I think it's quite good. I like the 4 locations. It is only a 3-month trial in each location. However, I'm heartened to hear Councillor Davis still pushing for that permanent location. It's something that I've noticed that there is a big community protest actually happening in our suburbs, and I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but ever since the motion came up in August, I have seen at least 15 skateboarders just taking to our streets. And they are just saying, no, we're going to take over the streets now, so you drivers are on watch and notice. And I've noticed that has happened ever so much more since this motion came to this chamber. So I think that's actually a very smart strategy to be seen, the young people of the city of Burnside to be seen by everyone, and to actually put their hand up and say, we need a facility in the area, please, thank you. So I'm glad to hear that. Similarly, Councillor Carbone, I was actually a teenager during those initial consultations, looking for a skate park within Burnside. Not that I would ever actually use one. I'm terrible on such devices, but I'm very civically minded and think that everyone should have an opportunity to undertake any activity that they'd like in their local community. So I will support the motion as it stands tonight. So thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Just back on the funding, it's not clear to me what, if this proposal goes ahead, what it will cost us on council, and have we factored any of that into this year's budget, or is it all for the next budget allocation? There's a figure of 60,000 for a cost of one of them, but I'm also keen to know an idea of the on costs, and because there'll be repair of parks. I would imagine these will be going onto grassed areas. There'll be maintenance. And will we have any advertising on them? I hope not, but I don't see that as an option. Thank you.
Through the Mayor again. Yes, so in addition to the purchase cost of the 60,000 or 61,000 that's quoted in the report, there is cost to move it from one location to the next each time, and that's staff time. The depot staff will be trained to be able to do that sort of thing. So that's around about the $1,500 mark each time you move the track. As I sort of mentioned before, there's cost for the sensors. We have some of those in Tusmore Park at the moment, which we're using in various items. So we have sensors that we can use there as well. And there will be cost involved in, for example, if we put it on a grass area, when you move it, you need to do some small maintenance and remediation to the grass in terms of coring and fertilising and that sort of thing to get it regrowing again. Those costs are fairly minimal and also would depend again on the exact site that we use. But the main cost is the purchase and the setup cost each time that you set it up.
Did you wish to speak, Councillor Davey? Okay. So Councillor Henschke, you have spoken, but you have a question?
Question. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. My question, Mayor, is with these sites, would the residents living around these sites be at all surprised about a pump trial happening appearing in the park near them. Have they been previously consulted in any way?
Through your worship, the entire city had the opportunity to be involved in previous consultations with respect to previous work in relation to the Wheel Park project. Prior to the installation of a trial, if council resolve in this manner, we'll ensure the normal resident notification process is undertaken prior to doing that. Were residents specifically consulted about a pump trial in those locations? No.
So I have another question, please, Mayor. My question is it okay to notify residents of such a trial and not, instead of consulting with them for their response? Because is it okay for residents to endure 3 months of something that may impact on their amenity for the purposes of this trial?
Through your worship, if council resolve in this manner, that's how we will proceed. So that's the determination that council will make.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I have nothing to add to what people have said about the possibility and the goodness of a pump track in Burnside. But I will actually pick up from what Councillor Henschke said. There are a lot of people in the gallery tonight that are here specifically because they didn't want this in their neighbourhood. And any of these, but this isn't the first time we've talked about this. There are equally, probably more people last time we talked about this. So I'm not as concerned that residents in some of those places have not been consulted that this is going to be a trial for a maximum of 12 weeks in their area. I don't think that's such a big deal because they were consulted right at the beginning. So anybody that's paying attention knew of the possibility of something like this happening in Newland Reserve or any of the other places. The ones that didn't want it have made a point of coming in tonight, as they can, as they should, in a democracy. And this particular motion has actually taken their wishes and concerns into account, which I think is fantastic for a democracy to do. So I think this is a good outcome for the moment, allowing us to get some stats and putting a new bright shiny piece of play equipment out there for the young people to have a go at. And it's going to be interesting to see how well it's used. So I will support this.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I think trials in government are a good idea. I've got 4 main objections to a skate park. Councillor Hughes raised 2 of them, which is public safety, and the second one, will anybody use it? Is it a waste of money? So I think let's go for it. $70,000, cheap as chips. Let's have a trial, 4 locations, $70,000, fantastic. You know, if the Mexican drug cartels descend on Miller Reserve, as I fear, you know, fighting over the drug trade, we can just rip the bloody thing up and we'll move it to the Civic Centre car park. So, I am pleased to support this motion.
Now, the mover of the motion was Councillor Hubel. You have the opportunity to speak to sum up before I put it to the test.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to quickly. It was remiss of me earlier to admit my thanks to Aaron and Kelly for an excellent report. Thank you. We are lucky in this chamber, and I'm glad there are people here tonight to hear this. We are lucky in this chamber that our administration consistently provides us with such well-prepared background information. It makes our jobs so much easier. A few points brought up in opposition, I'll just quickly address. On the matter of consultation, Councillor Henschke primarily, I think this is a trial and these are temporary installations. We're not permanently, affixing an addition to the neighbourhood. And another point I feel pretty strongly about this, is that we are in this chamber to represent the community and make decisions for the benefit of the community, and I think we need to stand up and wear our decisions, and that's something I'm very willing to do on this. I'm very proud of the decision we're making. And look, it is temporary, so if pain does exist, it is short-lived, and we'll no doubt hear the details, and we can take that into the account moving forward. And we welcome feedback always. Councillor Piggott, yes, it is a different type of play equipment. And the difference between skate parks and pump tracks, I mentioned, we're talking about providing an amenity for the community, and that definitely has a demand. As for slowing down talks, I feel this motion is actually instructing administration to carry on with these talks. A skate park is different to a pump track, and progress as one should not prohibit progress with the other. This motion asks them to be run separately but concurrently, given the relationship between the two. As for demographics, I think the demographic for this facility wants this facility, and I have no doubt this pump track will be well used. Councillor Carbone, I desired skateboarding a great deal in my youth, but I had a very rocky footpath on Olive Grove, and it took away too much of my skin to carry on. I guess to finish off, I do want to thank again the deputies and the gallery here this evening. We are here to represent you, and I'm thrilled with the opportunity of providing a Will Sports facility, hopefully, in the city of Burnside, and I cannot wait to visit it with my own children.
I will put it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Carried. And a division has been called, so please, those who have supported that or are supporting, please stand. Councillor Hubel, Jones, Dawes, Turnbull, Carbone, Lemon, Davis, Hughes and Cornish. Those against, Councillor Henschke, Davey and Piggott. We left anyone out? No. That's, should everybody? Carried. Could I have an indication of motion to have a break at this point in time for 10 minutes? All right, Councillor Davis, seconded Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? And can I just please thank the gallery for your excellent attention. It has been long, and hopefully it has been a positive outcome, and I'm sure the children of Burnside will benefit no matter where these locations are. So thank you for your wonderful attention tonight. Yeah, I didn't put the motion for a break. Those in favour of the break? Yep. we have a quorum, so we can restart. We have a motion to begin. We don't need a motion to restart, don't we? Motion to restart?
We don't need to restart.
Don't need to restart. Okay. Right. Number 7 is petitions. We have none. Public question time. It's looking like we have none. We now move to questions without notice. None. Motions without notice. Councillor Carbone.
Sorry, Your Worship, not a motion without notice, but I was hoping to seek leave of the meeting to make a personal statement, if that's okay.
You have your support. Councillor Carbone, please make your...
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to quickly address something that happened in the last couple of weeks, just to put it on record, just to sort it out once and for all. But there was a post on Facebook and Instagram a short time ago that was welcoming the new CEO. And I just wanted to apologise because I did get the timing wrong in the release of information. I saw a couple of emails in the morning. I thought it was at 9 o'clock. It turned out to be 9:30 or 9:45. So I'm sorry about that. I just also wanted to address another matter, which is a phrase that I used in the posts on Facebook and Instagram, which referred to Chris Cowley as a head kicker, and we have spoken about this, and I just wanted to say, first and foremost, of course, if you read the entire post, you know that it was meant in a positive way. Obviously, my interpretation of the term head kicker is different from that of others. So I did speak to a few people in the communications area, and they advised that the term head kicker is probably a little bit more negative than positive. So I did remove the post, and I have since spoken to Chris about this very matter, and it doesn't seem to be an issue at all. So I just wanted to say that for what it's worth, Your Worship, as head of this council, that I do apologise for the timing of the post and the choice of words that I used.
Thank you, Councillor Carbone. Now we'll move to 13. I'll go through the reports and see who wishes to withdraw them, for want of a better word. The Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillor Hubel, you wish to withdraw it for discussion? The Council Code of Conduct complaint has to be Councillor Jones. Burnside War Memorial Hospital. If no one, you wish to withdraw it for discussion, or do you wish to move it at this point? All right, thank you, Councillor Jones. The draft annual report. Councillor Piggott. First quarter budget update. Anyone wish to withdraw it? You'll move it? Okay, moved by Councillor Cornish, seconded by Councillor Dawes. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. So we can cross that one off. Local government reform submission. That we must do that one tonight. Do you wish to move it now, Councillor Henschke, or do you wish to discuss it? Okay, so Councillor Henschke is withdrawing that one. Minutes of the Audit Committee. No, you're moving it, Councillor Davis? Moved to Councillor Davis, seconded Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. Ranger Services Review. Anyone wishes to withdraw it? You wish to withdraw it for discussion? Councillor Henschke. Policy Review Road Traffic Management. Councillor Carbone wishes to withdraw. Pump Track, we've done. Policy Review Water Sensitive Urban Design Policy. Anyone wishes to withdraw that one? No? All right, can I have a motion? Councillor Cornish moved, Councillor Davis seconded. Those in favour? Carried. That's all of those, I believe. So, okay, that's later, and we're not moving into the subsidiaries just yet, Councillor Davey. Yeah, so we now need to move to 13.1, and that was Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Worship. Very quickly wanted to make some comments. First of all, section on some congratulations by the CEO.
First of all, you need to move the officer's recommendation.
I'll move the officer's recommendation now. My apologies. Is that it? Is that okay?
Happy with it in its entirety?
Yep.
Okay.
In terms of the congratulations offered by the CEO to staff, I just wanted to highlight that here in the chamber. Jasmine Schmel, I've not met her, but she received a high commendation at the National Local Government Customer Service Awards as a Customer Service Individual of the Year. Our Connected Cities project team was named the winner of the Built Environment Award at the Australian Smart Cities Awards during Smart Cities Week. And Ben Seamark is off to make an international presentation at the Trees, People and Built Environment Conference, flying the flag for the City of Burnside, and we wish him personally very well. I just think it's really important that we are acknowledging how wonderful things are going within our organisation, giving credit where it is due when it's due. Yeah, sorry about that. Second of all, just in relation to Constable Hyde, I had a couple of quick questions based on what was in the report. Talking about the stage 1 fencing consultation, what was the scope of that? Is the idea that eventually the whole area will be enclosed?
Through the Mayor, so stage 1 consultation was on the design of the overall park at the time, and that particular design had fencing as you see it in the park now, and at the time we had a limited amount of responses in relation to that particular design. Stage 2 is the plaza area, and I guess at this stage the question has been raised a few times whether we should have extended fencing, and we're proposing having a small amount of consultation to look at that now.
In respect of that suggested consultation, is there thought been made about approaching schools and preschools for assistance in promoting that sort of consultation, or are we thinking that we're just looking at the local geographical area? I mean, in terms of reaching a target audience for, desired users.
We would have to refer to our community consultation policy. Probably for that site, it was probably more targeted site-specific consultation, which would include a general radius around the park, but also signage within the park itself. Probably didn't consider going much further than that at this stage.
Councillor Henchy, you wish to second it?
Yes, I wish to second it, and I just have a question as well, please. Will we be with the dates for the council meetings changed here? Will we be able to respond adequately to the planning and design code timelines for consultation?
Through your worship, our project plan around that has taken into account the one council meeting per month, if council resolve to do that.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. I have a couple of questions. One is about the Constable Hyde Gardens Stage 2. One is the completion date and how the project's travelling, and are we likely to be finished before Christmas? And 2 is the consultation about the Stage 2 fencing. Am I correct in recollecting that the public consultation receipts for the Phase 1 and the Phase 1 plan did not include a fence for the Stage 2? The community and the community feedback was that wasn't supported?
Through the Mayor, so the first question, the project is on track to be completed in mid-December, so before Christmas. Second questions, the consultation, so the initial consultation was based on the current design, so what you see now in terms of fencing, and I did check the results last week. I believe there were about 4 responses in relation to the fencing. There was about 2 people that supported the design. 2 people that said we should have no fencing at all, and 2 people that said we should extend the fencing. But that was out of about 270 responses, so not a lot of people responded about the fencing.
Thanks. So the original plan did not include fencing that whole northern section. It was only the southern section where we had no fencing before. It was that first half of the park.
Through the mayor, yes, you're correct. The only fencing in the initial design that was consulted on is what you see now.
Thank you. My other question, Your Worship, relates to the, on page 25, the work health and safety finalisation of the non-conformance issues that were raised. Everything is just about completed, well done, but I wanted to query the chemical management system and the high-risk chemical risk assessment, which is due for completion in a couple of weeks. Is that on schedule, and will that be completed in time? Thanks.
Through the Mayor, yes, I confirm that is on schedule and will be completed on time.
Thank you. And one final question, in relation to Kensington Gardens Reserve, have any actual Ghana remains been found in the reserve to date? I know there's been all this publicity, but have we actually located any remains?
Through Your Worship, not to our knowledge. There were reports through previous upgrades that there may have found something, but that's the process that we will go through will ensure that we have an appropriate plan that takes all of that into account respectfully, and we'll provide you an information document shortly that will provide full details on that.
Right, there's no one else on the screen, so Councillor Hubel, do you wish to speak again? All right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Council Member Code of Conduct complaint, which is in relation to me, so I will be declaring a material conflict of interest and leaving the chamber, and therefore the CEO, acting CEO, will organise the appointment of a presiding member during this period of time.
I will also declare a conflict of interest in this matter and will leave the chamber given that I'm the complainant. So, see ya.
Thank you all. With Mayor Monsell vacating the chamber, I now call for nominations for an acting presiding member, please.
I'll nominate Councillor Carbone.
Councillor Hughes nominates Councillor Carbone. Councillor Carbone does not accept.
I'd rather Councillor Cornish. He's so much better.
Councillor Carbone nominates Councillor Cornish.
I think someone else should have a go.
Councillor Cornish does not accept. Do we have another nomination? Councillor Dawes nominates Councillor Piggott. Do you accept? So that's a motion by Councillor Dawes, seconded by Councillor Davey. In favour? Against? Carried. Welcome to the chair, acting presiding member Piggott.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Okay, motion, Mr. Jones. Councillor Jones, sorry.
Okay, so one, that the report be received. Two, I will rewrite as follows. That council takes no further action on this matter, comma, no further action being necessary. Now we can delete 3.
Is that the extent of the motion?
It is.
Can I just clarify? I think there's a requirement to provide.
You need to provide
Does that do the job in terms
That is
of
the reason.
just because?
Council would need to determine whether they will.
Okay, I'm told that it'll be a question. So could I just have a clarification of what the requirement of Council is. It is.
Through your worship, should council resolve not to progress the matter further or take any alternative action as specified in clause 2.24 of the code, council must state in its resolution the reasons for its decision. For example, council chooses not to take any further action in this matter due to because of the following reasons.
Okay, can I, Councillor Jones, do you consider perhaps expanding on the reasons beyond that it's just necessary? I think it may be in your best interests.
The issue I have is I have about 5 reasons why I think further action is unnecessary. I think the danger, as we've known from previous motions, if you put 5 reasons in, people say, I like 1, I like 2, I like 4, I don't like 3, I don't like 5. So I think making it as broad as possible, I think that is perfectly valid. Why are we taking no action on this matter? Because we don't think it's necessary. If I expand it and would achieve nothing?
No, I don't think that helps particularly. Is one of the 5 perhaps rise above the others? I mean, it's entirely up to you. I just if I was sitting in that chair, I would find it unsatisfactory in regard to the brief.
No further. Because it believes. Yeah. Because it believes we can propose that and we'll see how it goes. Because it considers the matter. It is well. I think this is probably. I think it's trivial and vexatious, but I see that's why you have a range of reasons.
You have legal opinion that's not trivial.
But I disagree with the legal
opinion.
opinion.
No, fair enough. Well, why don't we run with that? That does fit the brief, I believe, in terms of giving a reason.
All right.
You're on.
Okay.
It needs to be got right, Councillor Darby. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go with that. Can I change that? I'll accept Councillor Hensky's recommendation. Delete trivial. Okay. Right. So, as I said before, I think there's a number of reasons why we shouldn't take this forward. The first is, I do think the first lawyer's report should have just said, guys, really? Is this what you want to be spending $16,500 on? The fact is, what did Anne do? She wrote an email to the CEO, and he, as a CEO of 10 years' experience, should have just said, Anne, you're not allowed to tell me that. You're not allowed to give me instructions. If you want to tell me to do something, run a motion in the chamber. He could perfectly easily have done that. It's inexplicable why he didn't, frankly. Of course, he's not here to explain it to us. But we could have saved all this time and money by just saying, Anne, you're not allowed to do it. I mean, we quite often have things here where people do the wrong things. Technically, they could make a code of conduct complaint, but they say, no, you've done the wrong thing. Someone says, oops, sorry, made a mistake, won't do it again. It's all settled without going through this rigmarole, which really has just exposed us to ridicule in the community. So that's reason number 1. Personally, I do think it was vexatious and trivial. I think the first lawyer's report should have just dismissed it. You know, you can say you did get a lawyer's report, but I get lawyer's reports all the time, and, you know, half the time I disagree with them. And if you think about it, when you go to trial, lawyers are wrong 50% of the time. I think this time was one of those. I think, frankly, Anne also, you know, yes, she made a mistake, but she did it with the best interests of the ratepayers at heart. She was trying to save money. Yes, she did it in the wrong way. the former CEO should have just said, and you're not allowed to do it. You know, we could have been resolved so easily rather than dragging us through this. I note the second report recommends that we recommend and take further training, but frankly, really, what's the point? You know, if we didn't know before that we weren't allowed to instruct staff, we certainly do now. I really don't see what recommending training is going to achieve. Surely Anne knows what the issue is. I know what the issue is. I don't see what training is going to do. Let's just. This has been a canker in our council. We had the previous person whose name I won't mention, who wrecked the previous council. He's now running the danger of doing to this council. Let's just put it behind us, move on, say no more of this, save more money and angst and recriminations and misery, and support my motion. Thank you.
Seconded to the motion. Councillor Dawes.
Yes, I will second this motion, Acting Presiding Chair. Look, the wrong word was used. It did have the desired effect of stopping legal costs in a civil matter. And I do understand the Mayor's going to undertake the training anyhow, so I don't know if Councillor Jones is aware of that. But at the same time, my initial thought was to look to the future, and I really want to learn from this code of conduct process. I don't want to debate who is right or who is wrong, but it has gone too far. I think we all believe that. So there must be a better way of resolving matters of this type on what I would call minor matters where we have done the wrong thing but doesn't need an issuing of a code of conduct, but by mediation, by education in a mature setting. We are a mature council. We are different from the last council, yet as Councillor Jones has said, this millstone around our neck has also continued into this council. So it seems to me that we could have handled this matter not with a small garden, we could have handled it with a small garden spade, but we're handling it with a sledgehammer. And the headline in today's paper says $16,000 has been wasted, or I forget what the word was used. I now understand it could be up to $20,000, which makes me even more upset. So surely we can solve this more easily by adopting a results-focused, mature approach. That's the way I'd like to see it. And I see there's a motion tonight about having a workshop on code of conduct matters. And I hope that also includes how not to get to a code of conduct. So that's why I will be supporting Councillor Jones' motion.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Chair. I'll definitely be supporting this motion. I went to the ICAC training by Bruce Lander, and he just spoke to all the new elected members, hundreds of us, looked across and said, stop fighting between each other and stop going straight to lawyers. You know, it's a waste of money, and stop the bickering. It's as Councillor Dawes has pointed out, this has cost us tens of thousands of dollars already. We just can't go on. It's not in the best interest of ratepayers, absolutely not. I welcome the local government reforms that are happening because they do speak of this very problem, and I want to accelerate our review of our own code of conduct procedure. And I know that'll probably happen in due time when the due date's due, but let's get on with it now because our code of conduct goes straight to lawyers, straight away. It's the big stick approach, straight away, and it's not fit for purpose. It really isn't. So let's get on with this and do something for the ratepayers next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hubel.
I'm going to speak against the motion in its current form. On a point of technicality, actually, look, I do believe that in the great context of the world and the universe, and that the infraction was minor, and a lot of things get let go, and I believe our Mayor was acting with the best of intentions. However, a complaint has been made. An action, I feel, is necessary because that complaint must be resolved as per our complaint handling procedure. The process has begun, and we need to see it through in the proper way, and I think it is in the interest of ratepayers that we play by the rules and we dot our I's and cross our T's. Now, perhaps we could change, perhaps could have changed the what we recommend happens. But I believe we've gotten advice that there has been a breach, so I believe we need to acknowledge that breach according to our policies. And I guess, you know, let's, you know, don't hate the players, hate the game. We're looking at changing, you know, trying to get rid of all this fuss. Yes, I think that's good. It's going to streamline things. It's going to make it a lot more efficient. But we haven't been changed yet, and we need to do the right thing at an administrative level.
Thank you, Councillor Hubel. Could I just clarify off the back of that? I think one of the points he's raised is the fact that we've deleted number 2 of the original recommendation. Is there a requirement for us to acknowledge the outcome ahead of taking no further action, as Councillor Jones is suggesting? I hope I haven't misquoted you there, Councillor Hubel, but yeah, is that the understand? Yeah. It's better. No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Hughes.
I have to follow Paul, who basically stole everything I was going to say. I won't support the motion that Councillor Jones has put forward. I think it's important that as councillors and as mayor, we all understand our legal obligations. I'm not a black and white person, but I do think it's important that if there has been determined that there is a breach, we actually acknowledge that within the motion. And I think if as Councillor Dawes has said, that Mayor Monceau is already getting the training, then I have no issue with the current motion that was proposed. It's not our job to ignore the legislation and ignore our own policies that we have in place. As Councillor Hubel has said, if you don't like the policy, change it. So I think it's disappointing that we've got to this point. I think the process has obviously taken longer than it perhaps needed to. It has cost the council a significant amount of money. I personally am disappointed. I don't like wasting ratepayers' money, but at the end of the day, we have a procedure that has to be followed. And I think to not take our lawyer's advice and not acknowledge that breach, I think it just makes a mockery of the whole process and procedure.
Thank you. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Acting Presiding Member, Councillor Piggott. I'd actually like to offer an amendment, if I can, in item 3. That council acknowledges and does not condone any individual elected member to instruct the staff at the City of Burnside.
How are we going here? Valid amendment?
I think it's contrary to the motion. It's contrary to the motion because his motion says it doesn't matter.
No, mine is broad that we all acknowledge we cannot do this. Well, it could be a separate motion, but I'm tying it to this one because we all need to know.
On the face of it, I don't have a problem with it, but I've got some experts around me.
I think it's close enough.
If I'm happy if you don't.
It may be safer to do.
Just after all the training we've done. How do we ask us to change one word?
Yeah. Okay. Since it's too different, I will take my time now to speak against the motion. I am a little concerned with just not in the interest of ratepayers. I do believe we need more information in the motion than that to begin with. If we're going down to no action on this matter, I completely agree that it is a trivial and minute infraction and that the process is extraordinarily convoluted that this chamber has designed over many years and many iterations. I think we're on our 4th or a 5th iteration of this procedure. And we could do it better. And I'll actually put that and declare that right here in this chamber. If any of you think that I've breached the code, I'm happy for you to come to me and talk to me about it first. And if I will absolutely acknowledge if I absolutely believe with you that I have breached the code, and I'll make a personal apology, I'll make a public apology, whatever is required to correct that action that I've done. We don't need to go down this process, so please address it with me personally first. I'm big enough of a man to do it, and if we disagree, we can go down this process, which is the formal legal route. But I can't vote for the motion as it currently is written up there on the screen, so, but I thought I'd make those statements.
Thank you, Councillor Cornish. Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Presiding Chair. Well said, Councillor Cornish. I think we all would like to adopt this procedure where if you've stuffed up, somebody comes and tells you and you acknowledge it. There's too much time and energy and money gone on this for 16,000 and rising. We could have had all the vergers mown in Stonyfell with that money, or bought something for the library, I don't know. But it's still festering on. In my view, it was trivial, just one word, and dubiously obtained email. The ratepayers don't really care about the breach, they only care that the councils seem to be wasting money on more codes of conduct. And Burnside has a very bad reputation in that way. So I will support this motion because of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this motion. I believe that it seeks to sweep it under the carpet. And I think that we spent $16,000 not for a smart carpet sweeper. I think we need to deal with this. I also don't believe that this is a trivial matter. I believe that what we have in our documentation is no acknowledgement whatsoever from the presiding member that a breach has taken place. None. And I want that. I want that. We are about to start a new CEO in this organisation, and I want the presiding member to understand the limitations of her role, and I have not seen that in any of the paperwork that's come to us regarding this matter. So I don't believe we can just say, oh, it's trivial, and we'll sweep it under the carpet. And I have an alternative motion to go that will not cost the council any more money, but will actually give it the weight that it requires that we can move on from. We can move on from this if we deal with it properly. We cannot move on from this if we sweep it under the carpet. I don't believe that is the right way to go, and I actually think it is that will make us the laughing stock of the community. If you look at the Messenger newspaper Facebook page, you're already getting residents talking about how disgusted they are with this behaviour. We need to deal with it.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mr Acting Chair. Yes, I agree. I can't support this motion. While I understand the sentiment, it is quite a serious matter. It is not, I believe, a trivial matter. And while I'm very disappointed that this matter is before us and that it has continued on from when we first considered the matter 6 months ago or somewhat, we have a process in place that is designated. It has been agreed by council. It might be flawed, and we could do better. And I really hope the reforms, local government reforms, do review this and change this whole process. But we have to deal with what we've got now. And the full further investigation that this council we launched on the 25th of June, has resulted in a report from Norman Waterhouse lawyers, Ms Felice D'Agostino, who is before us, and it has made specific findings. And we have to deal with these. We can't just sweep them under the carpet. So I won't support this, and I will support a motion that addresses those issues. We need to do that for our ratepayers and to demonstrate to the community that we have integrity in these matters. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, for Felice, please, Chair. Felice, I've heard the expression swept under the carpet a few times around the chamber tonight. And you're a lawyer, I'm not, but does this motion imply that?
Is that a fair question? I'm not sure. That sounds like an unfair question, perhaps, to a legal representative to us. I don't think it's a legal question. I think it's a political question. So I feel that it's probably not appropriate she answers it. Any more? I understand just recently that presiding members have got an ability to speak, even though they don't get to vote, and I'm going to take that opportunity. My view on this is that it is really disappointing. It is a disappointing use of legal fees and ratepayers' money. My view is it could have been stopped a lot earlier. There's an argument that perhaps the complaint shouldn't have been put in. I'm not of that mind. There was a number of potential breaches raised. Only one of them was made the light of day in the first review, but it was a pretty clear-cut breach. In actual fact, it was that it had breached the fact that none of us elected members can specifically direct staff or the CEO without full counsel, and we have an email in front of us where the word instruct and instruction are included. So it was in a sort of pub test. It was a pretty easy one, I think, with all due respect to our investigator. I think it was fairly clear cut, and I feel it could have been stopped very quickly by the mayor taking a deep breath at that point and taking Councillor Cornish's view on the world and apologising, and that would have stopped it in its tracks. And I think we would have respected her even more for that. Instead, she just decided not to do that. We as a council were forced really to put it into the next process, and that process seems to have been delayed and extended, from what I can read, around, again, the mayor seeking to dissuade the process. In what is, I think, a really clear-cut, if you read it, a really clear-cut, not much more than trivial, actually. I wouldn't go to the sword on how important it is, but it is a breach at the end of the day. I would have supported the motion of the recommendation, which is pretty close to sweeping it under the carpet, but I feel if I had a vote, I certainly couldn't support it. Councillor Jones.
Perhaps if I could address the comments of Councillor Hubel and Hughes that we're not following our process. That's clearly not the case. Can I refer you to page 77 of the papers? Section 75, it is entirely open to the council to resolve to take no action. And that would be because we think it's trivial, it's just not worth pursuing. Now, I can see the way the vote's going, so I'm not going to speak for much longer. I just think this has been an utter waste of time. I agree with Councillor Piggott, it's very disappointing it's got this far. You know, the whole thing was very murky. I haven't delved into that. But I just think we should draw a line under it. And so I hope you'll support the motion.
Okay, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? And all those against? It is a draw on my reckoning. That is the magic chair. So I either need to change my mind from 5 minutes ago, or I vote against the motion. The motion is lost. Could I have an alternative motion, Councillor Lemon?
That the council notes the findings of the Code of Conduct inquiry in respect to Mayor Monso's conduct. 1, that council formally reprimands Mayor Monso for the breach of clause 2.14 of the code and requires that. Point I, Mayor Monceau, by means of a public statement at the meeting of council on the 22nd of November 2019, Mayor Monceau unequivocally acknowledges breaching clause 2.14 of the code. Part 2, Mayor Monceau undertakes code of conduct training, which I understand now. Before I go down this, may I ask, is she actually undertaking training on this particular area of code of conduct?
It's included as part of an extended training package. So
That's
yes.
already taking place.
Correct.
So we can dispense with my number 2. Thank you, if that's already taking place. You will note in my number 2 that I actually said through the LGA, so we wouldn't actually incur any more costs. This is cost neutral, what I'm proposing here. And that number 2, council is informed via an info doc by the 24th of February 2020 detailing when these requirements are met. We don't need to have that either. So all I've got is that council formally reprimands Mayor, which is in fact reprimanding her is by passing this motion. That will effectively reprimand her for this breach, and that at the next council meeting the Mayor publicly and unequivocally acknowledges that she breached clause 2.14. Now, the reason I've put this in is in that all the documentation that we've got on this matter, I see nothing from Mayor Monceau.
Councillor Lemon, are you speaking to the motion?
Yes.
Before you do that, can I just ask, as I did with the previous one, given that's not taking the advice of the our final report, does that need to be resolved in the motion? It does.
Ultra various, you can't require, you can request an apology.
All right, one question at a time. So Councillor Lemon, you need something in there to explain why you didn't take the recommendation of the investigation.
Well, it says we note the findings and the recommendations. Will that do it? Okay, so that the report be received?
No, in the council's procedure at clause 7.4 it says where the council does not adopt the independent assessor's recommendations, the council must resolve not to adopt the recommendation and state in its resolution the reason for its decision.
Okay, so I need a one before this, that council notes the findings and the recommendations. 2, that council does not adopt the recommendations.
Could I just come in there? I think what we're saying is that she has already done what the recommendation required her to do.
Yes, that's what I'm about to put in.
I apologise.
Does not adopt the recommendations because the Mayor is currently undergoing the requested training. Will that do?
That sounds good.
Yep.
I suspect so, yes. Yep.
And then 3, that council formally reprimands the Mayor and carries on, and that, yes, and that can be, and that will be A, by means of a public statement, or actually that can be the same sentence given that I haven't got part 2 to that. So by means of, and now requires, I've heard as an aside that requires is the wrong, I can't use requires. I don't want a request because a request can be ignored. I want something stronger than a request. So requires is what I put in there as opposed to instructs. Because we can instruct. Yes, we can.
Please, can we have some advice on that, clearly?
Unfortunately, no, you can't.
Oh.
Under the code sets out the sanctions, for want of a better word, that the council can impose where it finds that there has been a breach, and those sanctions are set out in clause 2.25 of the code, and they are all framed in request
Okay.
a public apology,
So
training.
okay, formally request then. requests.
Right, so but given that's not in there, so I
With
think
the S on the end of request, thanks, Robert. Yeah, so are you happy with this now?
delighted. Speak to the motion, thanks.
Is that, are you, seriously, are we?
No, sorry, I shouldn't be flippant. Yes, I think that was what we needed to achieve. We need to make sure whatever you're proposing actually fitted in so that it didn't fall over on technicalities if it gets up. It's now down to you to talk to it.
So it's changed from the original motion in that training is currently taking place, and we can be hopeful that everything that the original motion asked for will actually take place. As a matter of course, what I particularly think is important is that the Mayor acknowledges publicly to this chamber and the ratepayers of Burnside that she has breached the code. I think this is really important. Councillor Dawes said earlier on, we need to learn from this. Well, yes, we do. We didn't breach the code. The presiding member breached the code. She needs to learn from this, and she needs to actually acknowledge that she broke the code. And until that happens, I don't believe there is a way forward, and there isn't a way for us to put a line under this and say, there's a lesson learnt by all of us and by the presiding member who actually breached the code, and we can move away. This is never going to happen again. I haven't asked that she say this is never going to happen again, because there might be some inadvertence taking place in the next 3 years. But this happened within 6 council meetings of taking office. For someone that's actually been a councillor for 9 years, as long as I've been a councillor, as long as Councillor Cornish has been a councillor, I knew that you couldn't do this. So I think it's important that that is acknowledged, and I hope you support this motion.
Councillor Davey, did you want a second for the motion?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to second this. Based on the premise that we actually include there the report be received, because I think that needs to be. Is that?
Look, I'm not going to die in a ditch about it, but we know.
I think we need to put that in there. Yeah, and then we follow on with clarification. So I'm happy to second it on that basis. And I endorse all the comments that have been made. I think it is very disappointing that it has reached this stage and cost the ratepayers of Burnside over $20,000. There's no denying that. But we as a council decided to further investigate. We took responsibility. The Mayor pursued the matter and did not own up. She could have owned up at that stage and said, as Councillor Dawes has said, look, I've made a mistake, I overreacted, or for whatever reason, and apologised. But the matter has gone on. And now Ms D'Agostino has been called in from Norman Waterhouse, as per our policy and procedure, to investigate further. She's been put in a very tough position, and I value her professionalism and her the difficulty she must have faced in this, because she has been here training us and over many years giving us instruction and advice and everything about how we can comply with our legislative responsibilities. And then she's had to come back and undertake this task. We do, as elected members, have stringent responsibilities under our legislation. And one of them is that we cannot instruct members of council staff. And especially at the highest level, this is a breach of our legislative responsibilities. So it could end here. I hope it does. And I hope that the Mayor accepts these recommendations, if everybody else agrees to them, and that it can end here, that we can tidy the whole matter up and move on and learn from it. So I hope you'll support this.
Can I just clarify, Councillor Lemon, you're okay with that the report be received, that we can move forward? Very, very magnanimous of you. Councillor Hughes.
I just have a question, if I'm allowed. Can I ask why the recommendation didn't include initially for the Mayor to make an apology? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I guess in my opinion, I thought that it was probably more an issue of the Mayor having a misunderstanding about the boundaries of her role as a elected member and as a presiding member. And the former CEO no longer being an employee, I wasn't convinced that an apology was the most appropriate response to the breach.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to fence sit and see how the rest of the debate.
Okay, Councillor Carbone.
Question, if I can. If the Mayor decides not to apologise, is that it?
Clarification, I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking for an acknowledgement.
That is true.
If the Mayor decides not to make a public statement, is that it?
Probably not.
What? I don't think she will, to be honest. So if she doesn't,
Councillor Carbone, I can answer that question specifically, because our code says if the subject member fails to comply with the sanctions imposed by the council within a specified time, this will result in the council elevating the issue to the Ombudsman under Part 3 of the code.
Okay, all right.
Is that your question?
She has to, and she will. Yeah.
Councillor Hubel.
Also, thank you. Look, I am not going to support this motion with respect. I feel it is more heavy-handed than it needs to be. I think we're talking about one of our colleagues here, and I believe the Mayor is aware that what she's done she would take back if she could. I think that we should be accepting the advice of Norman Waterhouse, acknowledge the finding they've made, and point 3 should be, instead of saying there should be training, I think point 3 should be referring to section 7.5.1 of our complaints procedure, which says we decide to take no action. But I do think we need to acknowledge the due process we've undertaken, and I think we can end this here. I believe the Mayor understands the gravity of what's occurred, and we can move on.
Are you foreshadowing a alternative if it doesn't get up? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, if I thought spending 20 grand on this was stupid, this motion is even stupider. It's vindictive and nasty, and I'm not going to support it.
Councillor Henschke.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that it's a very good question from Councillor Hughes, and to hear from Felice that an apology is not appropriate. So I'd like to foreshadow that myself or someone goes back to a motion which is framed around the recommendations of our legal firm. Thank you.
Perhaps the original recommendation. Back to you to sum up, Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I'm greatly offended by being accused of being malicious. This is not malicious. Nasty. I am really offended by that. This is a very important motion that is actually asking nothing more than our presiding member to acknowledge that she's breached the clause. I don't see how that is nasty. At any stage in the proceedings from last February onwards, that acknowledgement could have been made. I don't see this as heavy-handed. I think that asking someone to acknowledge, which hasn't happened yet, to date it hasn't happened, $16,000 later, it still has not happened. I think asking for an acknowledgement of a breach is the only way to put this behind us. The only way, because until we have that, until that takes place, this has achieved nothing. Nothing at all. And I actually think that that actually lets the ratepayers of this city down. I actually believe very, very strongly that the integrity we show in this chamber needs to be individual and collective. And if one of us goes down, all of us goes down. By not voting for this, I actually think that we're starting to look very dodgy in this city in terms of not wanting to make a hard decision, in terms of not upholding proper principles of behaviour that we actually expect of each other, and most especially do we expect this of the presiding member who has the capacity to see the CEO and the staff every day. We owe it to them also to ensure that the presiding member is very, very aware and acknowledges her previous breach. I don't believe she will be able to move on from this until that takes place. I really don't believe that. And I can't believe that you think we're being heavy-handed. Yes, she's a colleague. And I actually think this is a really clean way of moving on from this. By not doing anything, I actually think we are failing her, we're failing each other, and we're failing the ratepayers, and we've just thrown $16,000 to the winds. I think we have, this is the most, I haven't asked for an apology. I'm just asking for an acknowledgement. All she has to say is, I breached clause 2.14 of the code. That's all we're asking for. An acknowledgement that she actually did this. I'm not asking for her to say sorry. I'm not asking for her to say I'm never going to do it again. I'm just asking for an acknowledgement. How is that heavy-handed? How is that nasty? I hope you do support this.
Okay, all those in favour of the motion? All those against? Division called by Councillor Davey. So all those in favour stand. Councillor Lemon, Councillor Davey, Councillor Cornish. Those against? Councillor Hughes, Councillor Henschke, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Jones, Councillor Dawes, Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Carbone. The motion is lost. Do I have a alternative motion? Councillor Hughes?
I would like to have a crack at the officer's recommendation, please.
Okay.
And I appreciate that the training may already be in course or being undertaken, but I think we should just leave it as is if that is the case and if that is happening. Do I need to read it out?
I think we can leave it at that. Yep. Councillor Hubel, are you seeking a second? After a question.
I was going to briefly talk to it.
Sorry, I went too early. Please talk to it. It's your
I know we've already
democratic
spoken for a
right.
long time, and I do want to move on to the order of business, but I just would like to say that I think this, I appreciate that it's not quite where Councillor Lemon put her motion, but I don't like to liken it to having children, but I think if an acknowledgement comes without being forced, that's actually going to mean a little bit more to me. So I think this motion is saying, you know what, council's investigated it and the people around here, around this room, believe that you've made a breach. You've breached the code. We think you should go to get training, and you know what, if the presiding member comes back in and actually acknowledges that off her own bat, I think that will have more meaning for me than actually forcing someone to actually make that. And I think given the recommendation that's been put forward from our lawyers and the investigation that's been undertaken, I think this sits nicer with me. I hope you'll support it so we can move on to the order of business.
Thank you. Councillor Hubel, you had a question.
My question was whether it was an appropriate, not amendment, but alteration with the mover for 3 to be replaced with the council takes no further action as per section 7.5.1. Is that an appropriate
That's quite a variation.
Okay.
So I think the answer no. So do you not want to second it? Or- Is there a seconder in the room if it's not Councillor Hubel? Yep, yep. Councillor Cornish?
Yes, I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation as it stands. It's, from my understanding, it's sort of middle of the road of the options that have been provided, so I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? Councillor Davey?
Only to say that, yes, I'm very disappointed the previous motion failed. I think I'm amazed that everybody's so many people are pussyfooting around this. The Mayor knew full well, after serving 2 terms as an elected member and then being elected Mayor, I believe the Mayor knew full well that you do not instruct the CEO in what to do. And it was a particularly sensitive matter about legal action that everybody was watching, the whole world was watching, we all knew was going on, and she should not have done it. She should have stood up, owned her mistake when she made it, as we all can do, we make mistakes, but she should have owned it and taken responsibility for it, then we could have moved on. We are now reaching a stage where it's cost us $20,000 plus. It's not on, it is not a good reflection on council, and I hope that she will now take responsibility for her actions, do the training, apologise and acknowledge her breach, take it on the chin and move on.
Any other discussion? Councillor Lemon?
Yes, I wasn't going to speak, but this is true. It was a particularly sensitive issue, and if we remember, the instruction to the CEO was not to engage legal people because we've spent so much money, and here we are $20,000 worse off. And this is from someone who actually campaigned. The campaign was, I'm going to bring the legal fees down. This is in her campaign material. So if she'd said, oh, I'll cop this on the chin back in February, we'd be 20 grand better off, but she didn't. She didn't. So I am totally disappointed. I am really sorry that we're pussyfooting around and we are not asking the Mayor to acknowledge this breach. And if you're expecting this to come from the goodness of the heart, I think, as they say in the castle, tell him he's dreaming.
Councillor Henschke?
No further comment.
Councillor Jones?
I just want to say I think there are some facts missing here in this debate. The former CEO was sending lawyers to attend a criminal matter, which he obviously realised with retrospect he shouldn't be doing, which is why he pulled them out. That is true. That is what...
Councillor Jones, could I stop you there? I think we've had it investigated and we've got the result of it, and I don't think it needs to be revisited, which is what you're seeking to do.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is, people are saying that Anne told him to stop spending, which I don't think he did. He was sending lawyers to attend court. He was not getting legal advice on something. That's what should say. That is a fact, I believe. So what it was being said in the debate before wasn't true.
Okay, probably not totally relevant either, but, but yes,
and then I would say, yes, Anne wanted to cut legal fees, which surely she was doing by telling the CEO, Deb...
Directing.
Directing. Agreed, she shouldn't have done it, she should have known better. CEO should have said, Anne, you're not allowed to tell me that. So I just want to correct that fact. I also think Anne did not incur any of the $16,500. First, the complaint was referred to the lawyers. We didn't even know about it till we got the report. Secondly...
Thank you. Councillor Jones has the floor.
Secondly, this council decided, I think on a vote of 6 to 5, to do a second investigation, which, I mean, it was a great investigation, but I think it was $10,000 we didn't need to spend. So I just wanted to get some facts on the table here before we vote.
Councillor Lemon,
I have a question. Yes, I have a question to you, presiding member. The lawyers that were sent, or were going to be sent, were actually sent as a result of an intervention order that had been taken out, and this was relative and in relation to the health and well-being of council staff, I believe.
I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to answer that. Am I allowed to answer that? Look, that's my understanding, yes.
So this was the CEO actually making a judgment call on the health and well-being of his own staff, you could say?
Again, like I said with Councillor Jones, I don't feel we should be re-investigating this, and so I don't feel that's a relevant question. I'm not going to answer it. Councillor Hubel.
I believe this motion is sufficient to put this to bed. I obviously would like to have not had a consequence, as it were. So that's my teacher speak coming through as part of the motion, but in the interests of expediency and because we know that the Mayor has undertaken this direction, or for want of a better word, her sanction on board already, and she has been undertaking this. I don't think it's reasonable to, this is personally, I don't believe it's reasonable to require someone to admit fault. We are accepting a report, an investigation that says our presiding member was at fault. I don't think we need to force the Mayor to publicly make that statement, because I think by the inclusion of number 2, we are recognising that we accept what the investigation has done. I think it's important we accept the investigation as a natural outcome of the process, but I don't believe we need to require our presiding member to do anything further.
Thank you. I will put it back to Councillor Hughes, who doesn't want it, so that's good. I'll put it to the floor then. All those in favour of the motion? And all those against? Good Lord, magic seat. So we make that 5-5, do we? Yes. Yeah? As the presiding member of the casting vote, I will vote in favour of this motion, as I stated I would have if it had been presented the first time, and I very much regret it wasn't. But I vote in favour and the motion's carried. Division? Called by Councillor Davey. Might go different. And those in favour are Councillor Cornish, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Davey, Councillor Lemon and Councillor Hubel. Those against, Councillor Henschke, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Dawes and Councillor Jones. And sorry, I should have included myself as for. Motion carried.
I've just been advised that we do need to go to 13.6 because we've already done 13.4, haven't we? Because that was the other one that was a must-do.
No, we don't have to do that. We actually do have the next meeting to do that.
Oh, so we don't have to do that one?
Well, we
This
don't
one here we have
13.6
to.
have to.
Okay, so we're moving straight to local government reform submission 13.6, page 461. Moved by Councillor Henschke. So, Councillor Henschke, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I, Councillor Henschke, move that the report be received, that the feedback on the local government reform contained in attachment E to this report be provided to the State Government and Local Government Association. I just wanted to withdraw this one for discussion briefly to point out that the emphasis on efficiency and effectiveness of local government is very dear to my heart, and I hope many of you, and that we continue to find savings as we go forward, and that we look for shared services between councils. I think there are some amazing opportunities to cut grass from one boundary to another, and I know that the administration is doing everything it can in that respect, and have got a very good team in the Environment Verges group under Alan. So I look forward to seeing those improvements. So thank you. I hope you support it.
I was hoping someone else would grab it. But I guess the interesting thing is they came here and they spoke to us about, you know, how local government needed reforming and all the problems. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah, seconding.
Yeah.
And there was a number of different changes, and I think my understanding is that Stephen Marshall actually called for a review committee to investigate councils, and it does seem to me that over the ages that any current government starts to lay into councils a bit of a punching bag. They say they're the inefficient ones, you're responsible, you know, you're the ones that are making everything bad, and oh yeah, we'll just do all this other stuff over here, don't mind us. And so often the problem, I think, is that we don't necessarily have the same platforms that state or federal government have, well, not federal so much, but the state government has in terms of bashing local government, and I've certainly seen that over the last number of years. And what I found really interesting thing out of this is all these reform suggestions come up saying we need to change this and change that, change everything. You know what, like, local government's actually doing pretty well. We are the closest to the people, we provide them with those key services, and we take those consultations and we speak with our communities and we make changes, you know, like we did on the Will Park tonight. We wouldn't have a deputation or a group of residents come in and actually speak at state parliament or federal parliament like they did tonight. They are more isolated, I suppose, and that's one of the benefits that we have. So in my view, there should be less done for you know, in terms of local government reform. It ain't broke. We're actually doing really, really well. And I think that's true across the sector, and I don't think that this doom and gloom mentality about local government that seems to get pushed on us, and we get picked on by the media more so than anyone else. I suppose they expect it from state government to muck things up, but perhaps local government have a higher standard. But
still newsworthy.
Yeah, it's still apparently newsworthy, especially in Burnside if anything goes wrong. But you know, I'm pretty damn happy with how the sector's going by and large, and I think that we are taking very positive steps, very active steps, especially with regards to waste and even climate change, and also managing our budgets and cooperation internally, and we are taking those strides forward. So I'm happy with the submission, but I guess my takeaway is that local government really is in need of massive reform, and it ain't broke, so don't fix it.
No further speakers? Back to Councillor Henschke.
Nothing more to add. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll put the motion then. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Need to go back to 13.4. That is the 2018-19 draft annual report on page 107. Sorry. Councillor Piggott, I believe that's you.
Thank you. I pulled this for a number of reasons, but perhaps given the time, I might sit on them. I do have one question before I move it, if I could. Would that be okay to have a question? Yes, no, I'm happy to move it first. Ask the question before I speak to it? Yes. Can I do that? Yep. On page 447, in the audit report, it talks about asset valuations being redone by June. Actually, it doesn't.
I haven't got the right reference. It says in there somewhere where it's a good idea to revalue our assets as of June 30, 2019, ahead of next year. I might have to ask you offline. I just wonder whether we did.
Did you want me to answer that?
Did we?
We did it as of 1 July 2018. So in the past, we've always done it at 30th of June, balance date, but we have found that that is very close to year end. So on the auditor's suggestion, what we have started doing is doing it as at 1st of July, so that we can implement all the changes by March, which is well ahead in time for the year-end statements, which is what we did this year as an 18-19 year.
Right. I've now found the reference, page 449, point 1 on the audit, addressed in future financial years. Top box. Did we do that? It's actually specific now, traffic control devices I've seen.
Through the chair, that is referring to the valuation that is scheduled for the 19-20 year. What we are proposing to do is going to market by December, and when we engage the valuer, they actually backdate and they value it as of 1 July. So
Right.
we are still on track for that.
Okay, no worries. All right. Look, the couple of things I wanted to do was, just say, it's a nice annual report. I made this comment at East Waste in that I feel annual reports for local government particularly are getting too big and too glossy. It used to be the joke in business world that if anyone was not doing that well, you could pick it by they had a really good annual report. The other thing actually is they had a fish tank in their reception area, so there you go. So, and I actually raised at East Waste. East Waste has got a really nice report, got a great story to tell, lovely photos to print, etc., etc. And I was going to raise a amendment or an inclusion in the motion that I think we should look at the annual report with a different set of eyes, and I know we have to put lots of stuff in there, and obviously we have to put lots of stuff in there, but I think we should look at just how big it is, how wordy it is for next year, to perhaps lead local government into more streamlined annual reports, and we should encourage it with our subsidiaries as well. So the second thing I wanted to say is I actually did think the Mayor's report at the front I thought was excellent. So I've read a few over time, and I did think that was good, and that was worthy of mention. And the third thing is that the story it tells is obviously very positive. Financially, it's very positive. It is a good chance, albeit over a huge document. It does cover all the things that council does each and every day, and on behalf of the ratepayers. So it makes very good reading. We should be very, very proud of what the council does. And I think if the document was 20 pages smaller, we could be equally as proud in future years. And I put the officer's recommendation.
I'll also make my report even shorter next year.
Well, it was long, but it was good.
It was hard too, because you had to remember things that were only until June.
Yeah.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'm happy to endorse, to second the motion. I endorse everything that Councillor Pickett said, although I do think we've got a lot to be proud of. I think your report was excellent, and I think it's a very difficult one to have for the first term of a council, but we have accomplished an awful lot, and I thank the staff for that. I thank Karishma and the team, and Martin and the team, for pulling it all together, because once you see it all crystallised together, you really realise how much we actually do, and we do well, and what good value, by and large, well, just what good value our ratepayers get living in Burnside. So I'm very happy with that. I'd like to see us all receive a hard copy. I'm not sure how many copies are being printed off. Is that possible for us all to receive a hard copy? Because I've got a whole lot of them over the years.
I would suggest that if you wish to receive a hard copy, let us know, rather than us all providing you with a hard copy.
Okay, thanks. And that we have some nice photos in there representing our diversity and also our beautiful green leafy streets, jacaranda lined or whatever, and our parks as well, and our sporting activities. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott, do you wish to say anything more to sum up, or shall we go straight to the vote? Right, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now, realising the time, we can do 13.3 or ask for whether you want to go to an extension of time. Well, that's 13.3. Okay, so we'll do that one. You'll move it? All right. I'm seeking an indication from... Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay, so you're moving that. Councillor Davis, you're seconding that. Those in favour?
Discussion?
Okay, say it again.
Without extending the time, for you'll then need to finish within 10 minutes.
Yes.
Or you'll need to extend the time, so you'll have to be mindful of that. So, get the motion.
Can we have the motion again, please? Councillor Davey.
That we consider item 13.3 and the remaining items on the agenda be considered at the next meeting of council.
Seconded by Councillor Davis. Those in favour?
Discussion?
Oh, sorry, discussion. Apologies, Councillor Piggott.
Well, I sort of feel, I mean...
Yeah, no, go for it.
It's been a big night. I'm not in favour of calling it 10:30 though. I do feel we go through 11 and knock a bit more of it off, maybe all of it actually. It's amazing how efficient we can be when we absolutely have to, so I'm voting against it.
But don't forget, we also have all of those motions on notice to carry over as well.
I agree with Councillor Piggott. I'm a fan of staying a little bit longer. I think we tuck in our laces and zoom through things. And let's not forget we have staff that are here tonight for the motions on the agenda tonight. So I think it's in our interest to expedite things this evening.
Anyone else wish to speak? Otherwise, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? In favour of 13.3 only, and then we stop the meeting. And since I have the casting vote, I would like to get some more things done, and I'm quite happy to even move to a compromise if we finish at 11:15. If that was, you can't. I don't know whether you can do that or not, but
So you have to vote against it.
and I have to vote against that. So I will vote against that,
And then call for it.
and then I'll call for a new motion. So that was not carried. Sorry, Councillor Hughes, moving to. Right, seconded by Councillor Hubel. Those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, those against? We're a bit of a stalemate here. That one was lost. So we have 7 minutes or something. Okay. So Burnside War Memorial Hospital Board, that was Councillor Jones.
I pulled this motion. I mean, I will propose it, but I have some grave concerns, frankly. A tunga was given to the citizens of Burnside. The Burnside community raised the money to build the hospital. And what we seem to have now running the hospital is a self-perpetuating oligarchy with no democratic accountability. Yes, it is. It is. Yes. And I'm going to oppose voting for board members. But to do that...
No, he's moved the officer's recommendation.
I've moved...
You have moved the officer's
I have moved it, and now I'm
recommendation.
suggesting that I'm going to vote against it.
It's not relevant to talk about oligarchies.
It is.
Councillor Davey, are you seconding this motion? Okay.
And
He's entitled to speak.
He is entitled to speak. I have to let him finish first.
Right, sorry, where was I? Yeah, I'm not smearing. I'm just saying I don't feel there is any democratic accountability in what is effectively what used to be a board, a council subsidiary, and the constitution was changed, and now we have no representation. We get a
Council has previously approved the constitution.
I understand the council has approved the constitution,
Yeah.
but that
You
was
don't
the
like it?
That is the previous council. I don't like it. I'm entitled to speak against it. I believe under the Act I'm not supposed to be interrupted.
Fair comment.
So I just wish to register my objection. Now, I might be in the minority of one who favours democratic accountability, but I'm happy to be in the minority of one. I'm often in the minority of one. I just think that, we're getting no information about who these directors are. The only time we've ever seen them is when they turned up here because they wanted a rate rebate. I just don't think it's good enough. So I'm going to vote against the motion.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to second this motion. I'm happy to second the appointments of Ms Alison Fitzgerald and Mr Craig Whitten to the board of the Burnside War Memorial Hospital, as has been recommended by the hospital board, whose constitution we have endorsed and who we watch over and keep an eye on, but who are a not-for-profit organisation run for the benefit of the hospital, with all the history and the, I can't think of the word, the constitution and all of the requirements that council has made of them. They are, as I said, not-for-profit. They are a very well-run and well-qualified board. I have no qualms, having been one of the last councillors, along with Councillor Davis, to sit on the board as a council representative. I have no qualms in recommending that we support these nominations that have been made by the board, and that they have the utmost integrity and operate very effectively. So I don't see any problem with it, and I hope you'll endorse these appointments.
Councillor Davis.
Understanding the rigorous process that the board goes through to appoint their directors, I have absolutely no hesitation in voting for this motion. The board goes through a very specific criteria. If you ask them, I'm sure they'll tell you, of who they appoint, and they recruit for a very specific skill set on their board, and they have a very specific makeup of the input that they want on that board, because they're running a hospital which has had significant risk and a significant number of moving parts, and you really do need to be an expert. And I hope that you'll support this motion, because I think it's in the best interest of the hospital.
Harvey, you wish to sum up? Councillor Jones, I apologise. I will then put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. I think at this point in time, at 10:27 p.m, I will close the meeting, and we've already agreed to move over all those that we have not completed tonight into the next agenda. So no, that's what we were doing. Yeah, we were. Meeting at 10:27 p.m. Well done. And thank you for your interest and your vigorous debate.